lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, guys, here we go. Episode number 247 of Sports Cards Live, Saturday night, November the 23rd, 2024. My name is Jeremy Lee. A couple quick announcements tomorrow night on the channel. The Fanatics Live weekly hockey show is back with Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show. Monday night, MC Mondays, Showcase Live, 78 high-end cards, and a few items that I don't know. I don't know how I'm not going to buy these things. I'm probably not, but oh my God, there's some pieces I really want. And also on Wednesday, we're going to do an episode of Sports Cards Light with Craig Hartman. We're going to be discussing the various sports card eras and how their current classification system taxonomy is insufficient, lacking consensus, and come up with some ideas for that, guys. Few sponsor shout outs, Filth Bomb Breaks. You're looking for a good breaker, integral, responsible. Check out Filth Bomb Breaks, 4 channels, 7 days a week on Fanatics Live. And if you're looking to add a grail to your collection, Fund Your Cards is the leading consolidator in the space. And just on Tuesday, we did the Fund Your Cards show, myself and Mark, the founder, but we had on with us as our special guest, Rodman Martinez. You can see that here on the YouTube channel. And guys, Mint Ink. I got there at the Toronto Expo. I got to the Mint Ink store in Toronto. Unbelievable place, guys. Check it out. They offer live shopping, breaks, grading, all sorts of great things in shopping experiences. Check them out. They are really building what is the premier hobby experience and brand in Canada. Check out hobbynewsdaily.com, everybody. Hobbynewsdaily.com. The guy who runs hobbynewsdaily.com, Danny Black, is also the guy behind the new hobby content on Sports Illustrated. So check that out as well. Leighton Sheldon will not be joining tonight, unfortunately, but check out Just Collect and Vintage Breaks, and we will miss Leighton tonight. Always love having Leighton on the show. Guys, this podcast is available wherever you get yours, whether it is Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else. Please check it out. Please subscribe. Leave a rating or review. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, so grateful and thankful to all of you for your loyal viewership, subscribing, all that. If you're not yet, go ahead and do so. Comments are rolling in already. We got a great show tonight, guys. And I'll also mention that you might have noticed we're mixing up what Sports Cards Live is on Saturday nights. It is no longer, at least I don't think it's any longer, a 2-hour-long interview with one person. We are bringing it into the future. And we're going to bring on different people every Saturday, a different mix of people. And we got some great people coming on here tonight. But let's bring out my co-host, Mr. Joe Poirot from Santa Cruz. I love the background. Joe, you ready for a fun show?
Hey, yes, sir. Let's go.
Joe Poirot. I was talking to a common friend of ours the other day, and he said, Joe's pretty poised. Joe Poised Row. Okay, maybe we'll go with that. And the person who came up with that might be joining us later tonight as well. So we'll break that when he does get here. Quick hello to you guys in the chat. Jacob Dahl, what is going on? Mike Nunya, good to see you. Steven Sports MD, welcome to the show. TJ is online. Good to see you, buddy. CH Cards, yeah, Sidney Crosby scored his 600th goal today. Unfortunately, they were losing like 5-1, but he did score his 600th goal today. Studio Sports, good to see you. And the Flames win again, 4 games in a row. Todd McDonald, good evening. Lantern Cards, what's going on? Rage is in the house, everybody. Quick announcement. Rage is in the house, everybody. Peeps is here. We got Sign of the Times Vintage. Good evening to you. Mark Santucci, good to see ya. Quentin EE, welcome. Laura, nice to see you. Robert Scott, foul ball, fair or foul? He says foul. I know what he's talking about. We're going to get to that, guys. That is the Shohei Ohtani autograph. That autograph that was wiped off the card and re-signed in kanji. It's up on auction on Golden. And I communicated with the guy who did that, and I'm going to share with you some of our chat. I actually have it ready to go. I'm going to show you some of the interaction I had with the person who did that. So that's going to be interesting. Very good. Al G in the house. What's up, Al? Al gave me a gift today at the local show, this Team Solani card, because I brought back some cards from the Toronto Expo for him. Al, was good to see you. And oh my gosh, was it treacherous driving for me today to get there. We are winter weather here in Calgary right now, no doubt. And Eddie B, see Eddie B, what's going on? I didn't see you at the show today, but I'm sure we'll see you again soon. All right, Joe, I'm excited. We're gonna have some people coming in and out throughout the episode, and but I think I want to start, Joe, with I went to the New Horizon. It's a monthly. It's a 1 day long monthly show here in Calgary. And I went there because, I'm the director for Slab Sharks here in Alberta. So I went there to pick up some consignments, and I did. But I also found myself some sweet cards. I just want to show them because, most people that watch know that I picked up this Babe Ruth back in August. It's a PSA 1. It's my favorite card I've ever owned, my favorite card in my collection. It's a PSA 1. And again, I never thought a PSA 1 would be my favorite card, but it is. Well, I found today, Joe, some vintage baseball that was freshly graded and low grade, but really nice copies. And I picked up 5 cards today. And I just want to show you guys what gets me really excited in the hobby as far as adding cards to my collection right now. And I'm going to start at 1954 Topps baseball and 457. So if any of you out there collect 54s or 57s, you know what I'm talking about. But Joe and everybody, check out my brand new PSA 3.5 1954 Topps Al Kaline rookie card.
Wow.
Yeah, look at the color.
The red, the saturation on the red. It's beautiful and centered too.
Centered. The centering is amazing. It's a beautiful copy. And the guy I got it from is 75 years old. And he's just starting to move some of his cards. And I was lucky to be there at the right time, at the right place. And I picked up the K-line from him. That's the 154 card. Now that's going to go. I have a Hank Aaron and I have an Ernie Banks from the set. So now I got the big 3 rookies from that year. I've always wanted a K-line. But my 457s, guys, I'm going to start with a non-rookie PSA 3 Hank Aaron. Look at it's hard to see. I know, guys, it's hard to see, but this thing is just beautiful. The centering. It's just got some corner issues, really. Amazing copy right there. And then the other non-rookie is the, you guys will most of you will recognize this, the Mantle Berra. It's a PSA 3. It looks, I would think that these cards I'm showing you guys could have graded a 6 20 years ago. But now they're coming in at 3s and 3.5s and 2.5s and that. Beautiful Mantle Berra. I've never owned that card before. And then the pair of Robinsons. I'm so excited about these 2 cards. The Frank is a 3 and the Brooks is a 2. Now it's a 2, but look at that for a 2. So I feel like I've been able to add more super low grade cards that just really punch above their weight class. Amazing cards. So really happy with those. And that's why I just wanted to share those. And then I did pick up a couple of hockey cards as well. Mario Lemieux, emblems of endorsements from 2007, and a Pop 1 Gordie Howe Cup base card from 2005 in a PSA 10. And I have a Gretzky to pair it with. So I like pairing cards. You like pairing cards, Joe? I love pairing cards together.
Absolutely. Yeah. The 2 Robinsons, I think those are both rookie cards too. That's really, really nice selection there. And I'm not going to ask you what you paid, but I think in that range of the 2.5 to 3.5, 4, if you get something centered, you're definitely getting really good value in terms of eye appeal.
I think so. I think so as well. Signed Slab says, so does wiping and having an authenticated card make it altered? That's the question. What is the deal with that? We're going to get into it. We'll get into it. LG, yes, it was white knuckle driving. I was driving on the highway today and the speed limit was 110 kilometers an hour. So call it 65 miles an hour or so, something like that. And I was doing 18 to 40 miles an hour the whole way. It was really, really tough driving. Mookie says low grade vintage baseball is my love language. It's my love language. I love that. Yeah, Mookie. It's mine too. We'd make a great couple, Mookie Chilson. A great couple. Thanks, Jake Dahl. Yeah, the show I went to is growing very nicely. Mookie says they're all killers, all newly graded. They are all, all these serial numbers start with 88. So that's pretty darn recent. 88 is, in the last 6 months or so. RJM says the grading standards for vintage are just stupid these days. I think stupid's one way to put it. What I like about it is that I can buy cards that look like this for prices that seem really good. So I don't know. I love it. Yeah, Mark Santucci, thank you very much. Robert Scott, bent ding cardboard, low grade vintage is my peanut and jam. Peanut and jam. Yeah, there you go. Peanut butter and jam. Steve Martin, I remember having a Bobby Clark rookie in a 4 with mangled corners. Graded now would probably be a 2. Yep. Bob Boozle. He's reporting me to the Mounties, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I don't know if it's for getting these cards at a great price or for driving super slow on the highway today, but good to see you, Bob. Bob Boozle. How's the wife, Bob Boozle? Is she around tonight? Lantern almost got snowed in today working at a remote substation in northern Alberta. And Foul Ball says, epic K-line. I have the 54 Aaron and Banks, but I need a nice raw K-line and a few commons to complete your list. Yeah. And I know you don't like graded cards, Foul 5 Ball. I think that's totally cool. But yeah, I'm super happy. That K-line is really, really quite awesome. KSA 9.5, CH Cards, welcome to the show. The other thing I wanted to share with you guys, if I may, was I did pick up a couple cards on the Slab Sharks auction on Thursday. So I grabbed this for my set. I collect these cut base patch parallels. I'm closing in on 450 of them from all the years, and I didn't have this Marc-Andre Fleury, and I had to bid pretty heavy to get it, but 183 Canadian, 130 US won me this card right here. And then the second one I bought was this Mika Kiprasov. He was, the best goalie ever to play here in Calgary, and a beautiful upper deck premium patch piece here out of 25. And this was the situation, guys, where you're bidding on your phone and you get outbid, and then eBay on the app presents you with 3 options to quickly tap, and it puts the bid in with that one tap. Well, whenever that happens to me, my thumb just instinctually goes to the far right, so the highest value, and I tapped it, and whatever it was, $160 something. And then I was like, I don't know if I want to win it for that much. I was kind of hoping maybe, if I didn't win it, I'd be okay, but I did. And I'm happy with the card, beautiful 4-color patch. But I was sort of a little hesitant as well, because that's a lot of money. That card usually sells for, a little bit under 100, but I shot my shot and I got the card. And sometimes you don't really, you tap that far right option so fast that you don't know what you're tapping until you've done it. And that could be a huge number sometimes if there's 2 people putting in some big bids. Kevin Hawthorne joining us from Lakeland, Florida. Welcome to the show, Kevin Hawthorne. One more thing I just want to let you guys all know. As you do know, Slab Sharks is a consignment company here in Canada. And we have the Canada Post, our national postal system, government owned, is on strike right now. It's a national strike. It's not a rotating strike. It's national. And some people who are buying from Canadians on eBay might be concerned that you're going to have to wait for those cards to get shipped. And that is likely the case. But Slab Sharks, who I work with and bring in cards from consignment, for my consignment clients, they're doing something really cool. I just want to share it with you guys, because I think they call it a strike announcement here. And they're actually investing close to $10,000 of their profits to upgrade the shipping orders for a couple of weeks. And that's just awesome. And if you are bidding on cards on Slab Sharks, but you're in the US, it doesn't affect anything. They don't use Canada Post to ship to the US. So have no fear if you are buying from Slab Sharks on eBay and you are in the US or international. The Canada Post strike does not affect you at all. So I wanted to point that out to you guys. And then I guess the other thing, Joe, we may as well just chat about is on Fanatics Collect on the premiere on Thursday. Ooh. They sold for the very first time since they took over PWCC. They sold their first 7-digit card, and it's this one right here. It got $1.62 million, 1933 Gaudi Babe Ruth, PSA 8.5. Now there are no 9s or 10s on this card. No 9s or 10s, and I think it says 3. There's 3 PSA 8.5. So this being one of the 4 Gaudy Babe Ruth from 1933. It's a very big card, very important to all the set registry people. And, it was kind of cool to, I've been covering the premier auction, whether it was PWCC or now Fanatics, for coming up on 4 years. And we hadn't seen $1 million sale in quite some time, and we just did. I know you like your vintage baseball, Joe. And there's the four cards, including this one here that I've showed over and over again now, and the red one there, the yellow one that looks like the red, and the green one. How do you like this red version, card 149, relative to the other three?
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought you and Adam did a great job with the show the other night, and had a great time playing the this and that game, and just hearing the insights that you guys bring to the auction is very entertaining. So thanks for that. As far as the Gaudy Ruths, I probably lean in the sort of traditional direction of the yellow. I'm forgetting what the number is on that, but it's the same issue as this, the kind of swing pose where, but it's the yellow background. I think, depending on the particular card, you're going to have some features that are going to stand out more. So I'm not inflexible in that. I sometimes will come across versions of the other cards that appeal to me, but I own a red and a yellow, very low grade. I have a BVG 1 of the red and a BVG 1.5 of the yellow. And, I think when I look at those two together, I prefer the yellow one. And, there's things going on with all of them that are great.
Agreed. I agree completely. Vintage here says full body pose, which is this one here, followed by yellow, then red, then green. That's how I rank them too. Me and Vintage are on the same page there. But I got to tell you, the green is starting to grow on me, maybe because he looks so unathletic in it. I don't know. Something about it, the way he's kind of sitting there all slumped over.
That appeals to you, the unathletic Ruth?
It's starting to appeal to me. Signed Slabbed here says someone sniped a Phil Esposito rookie for me on Slab Sharks Thursday night. You got to up your bid there, Signed Slabbed. You got to get it higher. The Professor has joined the show. Good evening, Professor. RJM, yeah, lots of love for the Penguins tonight. Very happy to see Sidney Crosby score his 600th goal. I think he's the 21st player in NHL history to do that, which is pretty cool. Bob Boozle is encouraging those postal workers up here in Canada to get back to work. Chad Shipper, good to see you, Chad, as always, down in Florida. Good luck with the new food truck, Chad. I saw you posting about that. Orlando from A Collector's Dream is here, everybody. Orlando, good to see you. Jeff McMahon is here, as always. Triple V, thank you very much. He has a low-end green Babe Ruth, and he's happy with it. And Foul Ball says, I would like any color Ruth. Yeah, right? No need to be so choosy when it comes to that card. I hear that. I do hear that. So in about 10 or 15 minutes, guys, Simon466 is going to join us, and you want to check out his YouTube channel. He always looks at issues in the hobby from in a financial investigative angle, if you will. He runs numbers, he presents them to you, and he's going to come on and we're going to talk about the fact that Moody's has downgraded the Fanatics debt and what that means to Fanatics, what that means to a potential IPO. He's done some content on it, so he's going to come on and talk about it. And I actually do have a copy of the report that I have in an email, so there's nothing really to it. But there's no pictures or anything. But I have the report, the Moody's report. But we're going to wait for Simon to come on to talk to us about that. And then one other thing I'll share with you that I just bought today. And this is pretty cool, guys. So I'm wearing the shirt right now, Hobby Hustle. See this Hobby Hustle shirt? This is a podcast by Zach Nygett. And Zach does a great podcast called The Hobby Hustle, where he interviews people. He does about a 45-minute long interview. And he also is a card art artist. He's a card artist. He does some creations, and he's doing his drops. Well, when he does his drops, and he's done about 3 or 4 so far, he'll do like 10 copies only of like the base red version and then a gold 1 of 1. Well, his latest drop was he calls it the big three. It's Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. And today, the auction ended for the gold 101. I'm going to show it to you. There it is right there. And I won the auction. I bought this card today, Joe. I haven't even told you that.
Wow.
I bought this today from Zach from his collectorcreative.com website. And it's just a neat piece. Now, it's unlicensed. He's a member of our community, but he's making some pretty cool cards. And he had me on his podcast, and he's always so supportive of myself and other people's. If you post on Instagram, he's very supportive, throwing those likes out there, and just a really nice guy. And I was just really happy that I could support him, his creativity. And so I wanted to call him out, just shout him out, really, not call him out. I want to shout him out here, guys, because Zach's a great guy. And I'm excited to receive this card. Now, I'm not going to receive it till I get down to Arizona at the end of December, because I had him ship it to my brother, but I'm going to get that. I'm going to receive that then. It's going to sit on my shelf. It's a really nice display piece. So pretty cool thing for me to add to the collection. We're also going to talk more and more, guys, about about this right here. Jeff Wilson, as you might know, on Instagram, posted this reel talking about the Shohei Ohtani autograph card. And I went through these comments, and there's several of them. And then even at the bottom, I said, I have all sorts of thoughts on it, which I do. We'll discuss it on Saturday. But all these different people made comments, including Alex Jaimo from the Golden Touch. She says, fair, it's the same human being being replaced, replacing a version with a better version, just like we all do in other aspects of life. So, that was Alex's take. I invited her to come on the show. I sent her the link. She said Saturdays are tough, but we'll see if she manages to pop on with us at some point today. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more anyway. And as I mentioned, I'm going to share the discussion that I had with the person who did that, wiped the auto, got Shohei to re-autograph it himself. Robert Scott says the red Ruth is the lowest PSA pop of the four. Yeah, and it's like, this is a pop 3 in its highest grade, which is an 8.5, which is, no 9s or 10s. Pretty interesting. RJM would love to have personally love the green Ruth the best, the most iconic of the Gaudy Ruths, in my opinion. See, I think it's the fourth most iconic personally. I think it's yellow, then the full batting pose, then the red, then the green. I don't know. To me, the green is the least iconic, but you go on to say, growing up in the 80s and 90s, that card was always plastered on every price guide and magazine. Hey, fair. That makes sense for sure. And sometimes what's iconic to one of us could be a little bit different than what other people think could be iconic, because of our experiences seeing those things plastered everywhere. But I think that makes a lot of sense right there, RJM. So thanks for that. Thanks for that comment as well. And I also wanted to, as you guys might remember, last Saturday, we went through some of those, what I'm referring to as stupid buy it nows on eBay, because there were several, and I got a few more tonight, Joe, to look at. And some of them are some of them are let's just call them controversial. You know what? While we wait for Simon to join us, I'm going to show you one right now. This one, it's kind of mind-blowing here, but let me just set this up. So look at this card right here. It was sold by Slab Sharks just 2 days ago. But you look at this card, and something should jump out at you about what is wrong with it, because right away, if you know hockey autographs, you quickly recognize the Wayne Gretzky and the Mario Lemieux autographs. But then you look at who's on the card. Neither of those guys are Mario Lemieux, nor are they Wayne Gretzky. So somehow at Upper Deck, in the assembly division of the memorabilia card for the cup, they somehow the Gretzky auto and the Lemieux auto ended up in a card that features Dylan Strome and Christian Dvorak. Now, Christian Dvorak is not much of a player anymore, but Dylan Strome, he's decent. I think it's his brother is playing all right now in Washington, setting up a lot of Alexander Ovechkin goals. So I don't know. What do you guys make of that? Like, what? Now, I think it's no problem selling the card. The card came out of the pack that way. So there's no issue the card being on the market. I think the question comes, how does this happen? Not that we know, because none of us are at Upper Deck in the assembly division, but is this card worth 2,026 Canadian dollars, 1550 US, when it's a mismatch? And what do you do with it after you get it, Joe? Like, I don't know. If I personally, I don't want the card. I wouldn't have paid 500. I wouldn't even paid. Maybe I'd pay $250 for it as a gimmick, just to have it in the gimmick section of my card shop, which I don't have a card shop, but if I did. But what, I mean, Joe, is this something that intrigues you at all?
It actually does. And maybe because I'm more interested in autographs than card issues. Now I'm not a hockey card collector, so it's hard for me to kind of figure out the gestalt of this mishmash, if you will. But I would love a pairing of autographs of Gretzky, and you're saying that's Lemieux?
Yeah.
I mean, notwithstanding the fact that it's kind of a Frankenstein piece, I find it interesting.
Yeah, and I think you're not alone, and obviously you're not, because look, somebody is going to pay $1,550 US for it, over 2,000 Canadian. If we look at how many different people were willing to bid in the thousands, I mean, first of all, you had 20 unique bidders, 36 bids, and let's see, you got 914, 1671, 699, 1011, 802.
So what would you reckon it would go for if the correct players were represented in terms of Lemieux and Gretzky on the actual card? Are we looking at a 5K card, a 3K? What?
I think we're looking at 5+. I think we're looking at like 5 to 10 somewhere. Yeah, because this is one of the best combination autos you can get in all of hockey collecting. So it's a pretty cool piece, in my opinion. It's a pretty cool pair of autos, in my opinion. The piece itself, I have no interest in it personally, but LGC here says it's a 1 of 1. Yeah, probably is. Bob Boozle says if that error is exclusive to the out of 15 variation, then the price may be fair. I think the error is a one-time thing. Now, I have no way to know that, but that's my hunch. And Foulball asks a great question. I wonder if there's an opposite card, and that came up in some discussions that I've been privy to. And I don't know, no one has seen it that I know anyway. So, but that's a great thing to consider if that opposite card is out there. That would be pretty funny too. And then I think that one would be worth less, right? Because the autos are where the value is and the game used memorabilia. And Rage says, with the way the hobby's going today, the reason why somebody paid that much is probably going to cut it out and put it in another Gretzky card. Maybe not. Right? Maybe not. I know a guy here who has a card shop, and his shop's called Maple Leaf Sports, and he has kind of wacky error cards on one of his shelves in his showcases just for the fun of it. So some people will just keep it as is. I think many people would keep it as is, but you do really never know, right? So we'll have to see. Now, I'm just wondering, did I send Simon the link? For sure. So I'm going to just go make sure that I sent him the link, because want to see Simon. Yeah, we sent him the link. So let me perhaps just send him a quick. He's probably going to jump in right away, because he's the kind of guy who's going to be on time. I would have to think. We're still a minute away, so that's no worries at all for Simon to jump in here. So, okay. All right. Well, good start. What we could do, until Simon does jump in, I'll show you one more. Actually, I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that for a little later, because there's another controversial card that was sold on Thursday night on eBay by Slab Sharks again. I'll show it to you. It's this card right here. This Mario Lemieux Cup RPA tribute it's a 2005 tribute, and everything looks good about it. That's his autograph. That's Penguins colors, but there's a guy out there called Penguins Chronicles who is a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey expert, Joe, and he insists from his research that this is it's not possible that Mario Lemieux ever wore this type of jersey where this patch comes from. So we'll get to that shortly. Simon has shown up. There he is, just on time. I knew he would be. So let's bring Simon on, you guys. Sorry, Simon. Before we do, I just want to make sure we're up to date with the comments here that are relevant to the things we've just talked about. Lantern does say if you type McDavid Draisaitl error in card ladder, there are examples of the same sort of thing as we saw with this card here. So if you want to find some more errors, check that out. RJM lets me know he was a guest on my show in January when we talked about vintage unopened packs. Did you hear about the recent T206 era Piedmont pack find? I did hear about that, and that is absolutely amazing for sure. And Timepiece Esquire says, my problem with comps is that often when I'm the losing bidder on an auction, it's just me and the winning bidder who bid X amount. So if I was sleeping and didn't bid, does that mean the market went down? That, Timepiece Esquire, that is such a great sort of reason as to why comps are not the end all be all, because there's so many drawbacks and flaws to comps being like the law, really. So at the card show today that I went to, guys, there was a guy, he had a shirt on, it said comp this with flipping the bird, like pictures of flipping the bird on his shirt as well. So he wasn't having any of people comping things. But Timepiece, that's such a great topic and comment, and something that we could talk about for a long time. And I'm gonna star that one to come back to it. But with that, let's bring on Simon Chan. Simon 466 Cards on YouTube, everybody, and Instagram. If you're not yet subscribed to his channel, check it out. Simon, welcome to Sports Cards Live, buddy. How are you?
Good. How are you? Hey, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too, Simon. Love your channel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right on. So, Simon, I wanted to bring you on because, first of all, I also love your channel, and we've known each other for a few years now. You come to my networking event at the Expo in Toronto. I see you at the Expo in Toronto. I see you at the National. Saw you in Cleveland. See you at all the shows, Simon. But your channel, you really approach issues in the hobby from a sort of financial expertise perspective, because you have that in your day-to-day career, and you're someone who can explain things that the layman maybe doesn't understand. Like, what does it mean when I say that Moody's has downgraded Fanatics debt? What does that mean? Well, I think you're the guy to bring on to talk about that. So why don't we do that? Why don't you, unless there's anything else you want to start off by talking about, you're free to, but whenever you're ready, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what's going on with their debt. What does it mean when Moody's downgrades your debt?
So before we get into that, I'm going to break some news as I tell the story, because I screwed something up with this Fanatics story. So I'll explain that to you as towards the end here. Yeah. Awesome. So I fully screwed this up. But basically, various credit rating agencies judge the quality of the debt of the loans for big companies like Fanatics. And that rating basically says, is this good debt or bad debt? Which means, how likely is it that people who have lent this company money can pay them back based off of their financial statements and how much money they make and all that, how much debt they have and all that kind of stuff. And so the downgrade basically says that Fanatics, their debt has gotten worse in quality, which means they're less likely to be able to pay it back based off of everything that these very smart people can see on their balance sheet. Yes.
When we say their debt, what does that mean? Like, and I feel like I know what it means, but it's like, is it like issuing corporate bonds? Are people lending them money so that they can go off and do things without giving up equity? So,
yes.
When you need to raise money for a company, you really have a couple of options: debt or equity. You either borrow money or you sell shares for equity, and then you don't have to pay that back or pay interest on it. So when you say that the debt has gotten weaker, it's been downgraded, that is debt that is held by whom?
Oh, so I don't know. It can definitely be bonds, and I assume it would be bonds or some kind of, the other option would probably be some kind of revolving credit facility where it's like a line of credit, but for a capital markets, $1 billion company like that. So those are the two main options that I can think of off the bat. And so, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think for this one, it might have been a revolving line of credit, but it's one of those two things. And so, basically the company's financials have deteriorated in such a way that Moody's has said, I don't think you're as likely to pay back this debt as you were a year ago, the last time that they revisited this. And so that basically means the company's financials have gotten worse. That's the only way to take that, right? And so my video was basically saying, yeah, this is bad. There's no way to spin that other than this is not good. But the one option that they do have, Jeremy, because you mentioned this, there's two ways to raise money. One is to issue debt, and one is to issue shares, to sell shares of the company. And so the ratings are just based off of what is currently existing for Fanatics. But it doesn't say what they can't do in the future. So if they pay down their debt by issuing a bunch of shares, then the problem of their credit rating kind of goes away because a bunch of their debt has gone away. It's just now that everybody who owns shares in the company has been diluted. So if you owned 20% before, you now own like 15% or whatever the number may be, right? And so that is the one option where if you read that story, sure, it sounds bad for Fanatics that has been downgraded, but they could like pretty quickly solve that problem by just issuing shares. And I think they're choosing not to do so because they issued shares 2 years ago where it valued the company at $31 billion. And I think given the downgrade of the company, that if they were to issue shares today, they'd probably have to value the company significantly or somewhat less than $31 billion, which when you do these like equity rounds and equity raising, like that's just generally not a good look because you're basically telling everybody who you sold shares to at 31 billion, hey, I've lost you some amount of money. And because this company isn't publicly traded, we don't know what it is until the next round of financing. And so if the next round comes in at 20 billion, it's like, well, sorry guys, but I've lost you like 15, 20, 30% of the value of what I said I would promise you on. So it's overall just like not a good look. Yes. So that's that. So,
couple questions. So the first one, you said that they downgrade the debt because Moody's doesn't think that they'll be able to pay it back as
less
efficiently
likely.
as they
less likely
to pay it back as on that same debt repayment schedule that they probably issued when they issued the debt. And then there's also the interest payments. Like interest can suck the life out of a business when you're heavily debt capitalized, right? So, okay, two questions. Number one, Moody's issues this report. Moody's is not on the inside of Fanatics. All they can do is read their quarterly and annual reports. That's all they can really do. And then they make their assumptions and they issue their report. And I've been on the inside of corporations before that have been, publicly traded. And I always kind of, shrugged or shook my head because nobody outside the company really knows what's going on inside the company. And there's two different stories there. There's what's going on inside the company, what the Moody's and the other companies like them, what their reports say. And there's actually what's probably actually going on. So, what are your thoughts on the interest portion of what they're having to pay every month to finance that debt? And what does Moody's really know? Is Moody's that good at assessing the quality of the debt?
So I would hope so. They're one of 3 or 4 companies that do this. It's them, S&P, Finch, and I think I'm missing one else, right? So they're one of the 3 or 4 big players in the space that are just, this is what they do. And so they should be good at it. But like you said, they can only do as well as what the financial statements say. And sure, like if you are someone at Fanatics, you can set up a meeting with Moody's, S&P, Fitch, any of these ratings and like, say, let me, like numbers don't tell you the full story. Let me explain what's happening here. We're going to do this in the next quarter. Things are going to get better. You can kind of give them this, like, do a bit of a dog and pony show to like put some lipstick on a pig, as they say, right? So to make it seem a little bit better. And then maybe they'll like adjust you up or down, or better by one rating or something. So there's definitely a limit to what the financial statements say versus what you can also just tell them in person about like your strategic plans of what you plan to do, right? So there's that piece. But yeah, like it seems like there is a lot of debt on Fanatics commerce, and I'm going to get back to that because that's very important. And that there is just not enough money to cover their interest payments.
Bob Booth will just, he's lipstick on a pig. Sounds like my anniversary dinner. Bob, Appreciate the comedy here for sure. Let's 10x. He says, let's 10x the debt, baby. A play on Michael Rubin's Let's 10x the hobby for sure. And Foul Ball says basically the Fanatics credit score went down, and I think that's basic. That kind of sums it up too, doesn't it? It's as if it's their credit score, right? So, and Rage is saying, is Dun and Bradford Simon the one that you missed? Dun and Bradstreet, isn't it? Dun and Bradstreet, maybe. Anyway.
I don't work day-to-day in debt, so I'm not as familiar with this kind of stuff.
Vintage asks, is lower debt rating a bigger issue with private companies that can't issue shares? Do you know the answer to that? I mean,
I do not. I would be
private companies can issue shares, and they do issue shares on a very regular basis. So I don't think that's an issue, Vintage, because private companies often do issue shares. They just don't do it on the public markets. They do it privately. I want to also ask you, because, you know, here we are, we're a sports card podcast here, show on YouTube, and we're talking about debt, and it's kind of dry, to be honest, right? How does this relate to the Fanatics that we know, the Fanatics that sells all their apparel on their website and that owns Tops and has the licenses for sports cards? Simon, can you help us understand what a report like that, what impact that may or may not have on our hobby?
So this is where I'm going to admit where I screwed something up, and this is the late breaking news. So that report was about the debt for Fanatics Commerce. Fanatics Commerce is not actually the holding company that holds everything. That's called Fanatics Holdings. So Fanatics Holdings is the company up here, the umbrella company. Fanatics Commerce is down here. They do the merchandise. Fanatics Collectibles is a completely separate company. So basically think of Fanatics Commerce and Fanatics Collectibles like brother and sister. They're at the same level, but they're completely separate entities. And this report was solely about Fanatics Commerce, which says nothing about the collectible side and the card side. So it actually basically says nothing about that. Now, Fanatics Holdings as a whole, they also had a downgrade about a year ago. But this report, and this is the part where I screwed up and it got wrong, and I'll issue another video about that in a couple of days, is basically, this is a big nothing burger. It is just about the collectible side. It has nothing to do with so it has everything to do with the merchandising and that side. It has nothing to do with the collectible side. It's a completely separate corporate entity and company under the Fanatics Holdings umbrella. So this is all just, we can all move on. Is unfortunately what I discovered about 45 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago.
Is there not a parent holding company that owns all of these different divisions, like Fanatics Commerce, Fanatics Collectibles, the gambling side of things, the events, the Fanatics Collect website, previously PWCC? I mean, when you say that it's a nothing burger, but do these companies that are all divisions of the overall conglomerate, would they not ever like help subsidize each other? Could the fact that Fanatics Commerce may be in trouble from a debt perspective, could that mean that maybe Fanatics Collectibles, like the Tops division, needs to help finance that? Could that suck some of the cash flow out of Tops?
So I was reading this article again. This is partially why I was a couple of minutes late here. So the answer is yes. And it seems like from what I read, there's a report about a year ago that Fanatics Holding, which is like the parent company, the umbrella company, has a $1.5 or $1.7 billion that it can strategically use to give money to Fanatics Commerce, which is like the merchandising side, which sounds like it's struggling, or the other arms of their company, right? So yes, it's definitely there's not an unlimited amount of money available. And so if one arm of Fanatics is struggling, then that means there's less money to support other arms. So that even if there is an investment to be made in Fanatics Collectibles because they want to do whatever stuff with events, stuff with live shows, stuff with improving the QA on their product and their printing machines or whatever, well, now that you have to figure out if you're the holdings company, whether or not that money is better spent there or better spent kind of rescuing the commerce company because of all the debt that they have. So it's definitely like it's not an unlimited pot of money to share.
All right. No, appreciate it. I have a couple more questions for you, but very first, Dave Kaplan says, "Dry, this guy is awesome." Well, make sure you guys are subscribed to your YouTube channel is simply Simon466. Right?
Yeah, it's right. No, wrong way. There we go. There, I can't do this properly. There we go. There we go. There.
It's right under his name, everybody.
There you go. Yeah, that's the channel.
Simon466 Cards is the channel name. So make sure you go throw a subscription over at Simon. And before I ask you my next question, Bent Ding Corners, I got a bowl of KD and an Alexander Keith's beer. Let's get our Canadian on. That's hilarious. Bent Dinged Corners for sure. LGC says it's called a red herring. What does that mean, Simon?
In this case, I'm not sure what he's referring to. What is a red herring?
Yeah. LGC, feel free to clarify what you were referring to there.
A red herring's a sort of a false clue. Sorry.
Yeah. So sorry. I meant like I didn't know what he was.
What was the false clue that he was alluding to? Got it.
Yeah. I didn't know which thing was the false. Like was like the fact that this was about Fanatics commerce and not Fanatics collectibles. Is that the red herring? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Timepiece here says, you know how you 10x the hobby by creating really cool, innovative, and beautiful cards, which is what Upper Deck used to do in the 90s. Bring back the 90s. I miss the 90s. I think a lot of us miss the cards of the 90s. I did pick this up today, though, at the local show. It's an Alexander Ovechkin Soul of the Game Gold. Nice. Now, these were basketball cards back in the day. There's a Kobe, there's an MJ. And they were not die cut, but they were intended to be originally. I think they ran out of budget at Fleer or Skybox, wherever they came out of. But Upper Deck does make this one, and it's numbered out on the back out of 99. You can kind of see it right there. I got this at the show today. Ovechkin. It's a beautiful card. I paid $40 for it. I was pretty happy with that.
What year is that from?
This is 2023, 23-24 Metal Universe Hockey. Yeah. Pretty cool card. Cool card. Vintage then says, bottom line as I see it, Fanatics having financial struggles is a negative for the hobby overall. Simon, does that resonate with you?
I mean, it's not good news, but it's more of like a muted impact, I would say, at this point, right? If it starts affecting the parent company, then I think, yeah, that's okay. When things get in trouble.
Appreciate that. The Loud Collector, Phil says, great Ovi card. The golds are really nice. I agree. For sure. Retro, but Timepiece does not like retro cards. And, some I do, some I don't. This one is pretty darn nice, though. I'm pretty happy with it. So, okay. Now, the other question I want to ask you, Simon, was simply, what else are you working on right now? Because one thing Simon does, everybody, is at the end of his video, which what do you do about a video a week? You're not a daily guy, right?
Twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays.
Twice a week, and at the end of almost every video, you will say, "Here's what the next video is going to be about." So, are you willing and able to give us a little preview? What's coming on tomorrow? What's coming tomorrow on your channel?
It is what impact will the Trump presidency have on sports cards?
See, guys, this guy looks at macro issues and applies them to the hobby, and that's why I think you should subscribe to his channel and check out his videos. And Simon, I hope you do get some subscriptions out of this. And you know what? As the weeks go by here, and here Joe and I continue to sit here on Saturday nights, want you to come back. Not every Saturday, but come back here and there. 1-2 Saturdays a month, and pop in and give us an update. That's interesting, though. That's an interesting one. We might have to get you back on sooner than later. But we'll talk about that. Bob Boozle says you can wear a 1990s starter jacket in space, but apparel these days falls apart in the washing machine. And that's by design, guys. That is by design. So that you just go out and buy more and more and more merchandise and products so that the companies can get bigger and bigger and fatter with more and more profits. They fall apart by design.
And then they just label it as fast fashion.
Fast fashion, just like the way you get a new iPhone every 2 years. It's all consumerism, and they've got us by the what in that. Dave says greatest innovation of the hobby, putting the name and year of the set on the back of the card. That's a good call, because companies didn't always do that, and now they do. I love that. Simon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I agree with that. I really wish that the companies would not just do that, but also say, because there's a million parallels out there, right? What parallel is this? You should be able to look in the back and say, oh, this is a silver, this is a refractor, this is that. Because there's too many out there. Like, simplify it for people to enter the hobby who are new to the hobby, so that they don't need to, Google, this one is gold-ish color and has weird squiggles on it. What is that? Make it easy for someone to enter the hobby to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, you like that idea too?
Oh yeah, I mean the hyper or the shock,
Yes.
things, and sometimes mojos aren't numbered, so you don't know. It gets a little bewildering.
And it's Opeachy Platinum, which is produced by Upper Deck. They do that now, but they didn't do it back at the beginning when they started that product in like 2013, I believe. But now they do. They put on the back what the name of the set is. That's a great. I agree, Dave. That is one of the best innovations that we've seen in some time.
Can I add one more? It would be great if Upper Deck, for all of their sets, use the same numbering for the same parallel. So if you're a gold for, I'm more familiar with basketball. So if it's like gold for Prism is out of 10, and then gold for Select is out of 10, and whatever. I feel like it's not consistent across lines and brands. So hopefully when Fanatics and Topps do baseball, basketball, football, gold in Topps is out of 50. Or let's hope that it's also out of 50 for a football and basketball, so that it's all uniform and so that it's more consistent, it's less confusing. That's my hope.
Agreed. I think that's a great idea. I think we all think that's a great idea, and that would be nice to see. Okay, so there's been a request, Simon. Okay. Timepiece Esquire says, Simon, let's see some of your cards. Show us your card credentials. He goes on to say, Jeremy has his card credentials in the background. That's what I'm talking about, Simon. Where are your trophies? He's already up and out of his chair, guys, grabbing some of his cards. And I can tell you, I've seen Simon at the card shows with cards on his person. So I know this guy has a collection.
Give me a second
Simon,
here.
Yeah, go. Take a moment. LGC says Embiid is in shambles. Aaron Rasmus asks everybody to hit the like button on the video. Yeah, guys, if you haven't hit the like, hit the like. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. You can do notifications if you want. But appreciate that for sure. Rage says Pacific used to do that, and I love that you can figure out exactly where the card came from. Yeah, that's for sure. Timepiece is saying those are Panini brands you're talking about, Simon. And Upper Deck is a true, real card company. He says Panini is an interloper. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Upper Deck and what they do, but Panini's made some. Joe's doing this because Joe likes his Steph Currys and Joe likes his modern basketball, don't you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not going to diss on Panini, but maybe in the last few years they've blown it up a little much.
Well, here's a Panini and an Upper Deck basketball card. This is a Larry Bird exquisite 2011 exquisite dimension autograph and a PSA 10 brick slab. And then I'll also show you guys a Panini Noir Jalen Brunson. I think it's an RPA from 2018. And these are I'm just showing you these because this was a consignment I brought in today at the local show here in Canada. I took in some basketball cards. These will be going up on Slab Sharks, if not this coming Thursday, next Thursday. Simon, did you find a few cards?
I found a few. So someone mentioned Embiid in the chat. So he's my favorite basketball player, and we don't want to talk about him right now. It's not doing great. So we're gonna go to my favorite hockey player, which is Mario Lemieux. So this is Precious Metal Gems from 2014. But the more important part of this is that if we look at the serial number, it is numbered 66 out of 100, which is his jersey number.
Ooh,
so there's that.
Love that.
And then this is from his playing days career. So let's look at here. So this is on-card auto from 1996. Mm-hmm. And again, if you look at the back, this is serial numbered 66 out of 1996.
And so that's, out of almost 2,000, that's tough to find.
Yeah, I found it on eBay randomly. And I have a search. Let's just call it that way. And And so yeah, and then the other thing that I have, I don't have I only have two of them here. I can't find the other one. So Lemieux's number was 66. So when I played sports, I wore 65 because I can't wear 66. That's just silly.
Right.
So I have a BGS 6.5 Mario Lemieux. Now, let's see here, and then a KSA 6.5. I can find my SGC, and the PSA is in a vault. So I have the grading 6.5 rainbow with my jersey number. That is one off from Lemieux's number. So that's
I picked this Lemieux up today. It's only out of 15, so it can't be 65. But I did pick up a Mario, and as Phil here says, Oli Lefsa, because that's what his autograph looks like, as per Josh Madigan of the Gong Show. Shout out the Hockey Cards Gong Show. Shout out Phil, who had his debut episode last night on YouTube on the Hockey Cards Gong Show YouTube channel of Fridays with Phil. So check that out, guys. Fridays with Phil, a new Friday night live stream on YouTube. Go ahead.
One more thing. So here's a card that I didn't know about until you mentioned it on one of your shows like a year or two ago. This is a Mario Lemieux retro Young Guns. So I learned about this card from you during one of your shows. And this is the silver glossy version, which is numbered out of 10, if you can see that there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a beast.
Yeah, so I'm a big Lemieux guy.
Well, Timepiece is approving, and he's going to sub. You've earned his trust. He's given you the googly eyes. He first card he set up here. If Simon doesn't show us a beautiful Mario Lemieux card, I won't approve of his credentials. Wow, first card you show, Mario Lemieux.
I'm wearing the shirt right here.
He's even wearing the shirt.
Come on.
Simon Aaron likes it. Mark Santucci says, does Simon like Lafleur or Howe and Esposito?
No, Lemieux was my era. I guess I'm younger than I look. So.
Hey, that's good. It's good to be young. Oh no, it's not.
No, that's bad. No, that's
the wrong way.
No, that's the other way. You want it the other way around.
Yeah. Very nice. Foul Ball says Panini Baseball is not impressive at all with the airbrushing. I mean, airbrushing isn't something that we as the hobbyists really do love. Timepiece, okay. What about a beautiful Jagger card to complement the Lemieux? Any Jagger?
No, I have a troubled history with a man who abandoned Mario Lemieux in the year 2001.
Okay. And Aaron, thanks for being here, buddy. We'll see you next time here on the channel. So your next video on Sunday is going to drop, and that is the impact of the election on the hobby. Are you willing and able to give us a little peek into what you might be talking about in that? Anything you want to break here right now?
The impact on his proposed policy on the value of the US dollar, which just so happens to be what all sports card values are denominated in, right? Because anytime we look up any type of tool, comps, whatever, they're all in the last sale, it's always in USD. And so what does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. So there's something to consider and to tune into Simon's channel on Sunday. All right. So again, to everybody watching, as you can see, Sports Cards Live is taking a bit of a shift in format here, and I'm still getting used to it myself. So we are expecting more people to come join us. And so we're going to just kind of, Simon, you're welcome to hang out until someone else does come along. But in the meantime, I want to talk about some of these. The question is, do we get into the Shohei Ohtani card? Let's ask the chat. What do you guys want to talk about first? The Shohei Ohtani card, or do you want to talk about what Timepiece Esquire brought up earlier about comps? Do you want to get into a comp discussion or the Shohei Ohtani autograph discussion? And I'm going to go see if we get a couple of responses in the chat from you guys. In the meantime, Webo2 says related finance talk, upcoming GST break. That's a value added tax here in Canada that may benefit Canadian collectors. We are getting like a 3-month break on that 5% tax, that's where I live, the province I live. Some provinces is actually 13%, right? Yeah, where you are.
Let's go.
And it's on cars too, is it not?
It's only like a limited amount of goods. It's not.
It's on I think it's on clothing, groceries, housing, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be on sports cards. I think it's more for day-to-day needs.
Okay.
Unfortunately, although I think you and I might be able to argue, yeah, for us, this is a day-to-day need. We need sports cards in our lives to keep us, you know?
For sure. I completely agree with that. Timepiece here says, is Bitcoin going to raise our card prices? Hopefully. What do you think of that, Simon?
I don't know enough about Bitcoin, to be honest.
All right. Okay, Simon, you're welcome to stick around because we got another person who just showed up. Hey, he's in the background, guys. Let's bring on none other than, are you ready for it? These guys don't even know who's coming. Let's bring him on, everybody. Cage Lawyer coming at us from New York City. What's going on, Cage?
Listen, I like this conversation, man. I'm a full coiner myself, so I'm hoping Bitcoin goes up.
Well, what do you think? What do you think? Bitcoin and cards. Here we go. Timepiece says, hoping people lock in Bitcoin gains with some smart money card investments. So are you gonna sell some Bitcoin or what? You're gonna write up to $900,000, I heard.
Listen, I'm never selling it because I've sold enough stuff that went up and I'm like, all right, you know what? I had it when it was this. And that's the one thing that I'm not going to be like, oh, I had so many of it. You know, it's the one thing I'm just going to like, it is what it is. But it's funny. I do think it's tied in. A lot of people have, some crypto gains and they spend it on cards 100%. I've started to hear it more from folks who I was looking to make deals with. People are saying the same stuff. It's, I want to keep our uncle out of this, not Uncle Lou or Uncle Al. They want to keep Uncle Sam out of it. And they want it's in Bitcoin. I was hearing that even before the rise. And now, people have more to spend. So obviously it's stuff that happens, it's like, our world, Instagram made it small, social media made it small. We all know where the cards are, it's easy to hunt the cards, but it's still a pretty crazy big world. And if I find a card, like one I found recently was in Hawaii, like I'd love to go there. I'd love to take a trip, but I got kids in school. I got a wife who probably would want to come to Hawaii with me, but she's not going to let me fly over there. But the guy is like, hey, send over some Bitcoin. That way, unless you want to come here and pay cash. So, I've heard that a lot more in the last couple of years than I had heard, previously. So, yeah, Bitcoin going up, I think allows people to, spend some money on cards. And I know there are some big names who have come into space who have made some big splashes. The Instagram handles. Those are crypto people. I mean, I can name, probably a good dozen of them who are buying a lot of Prism Golds, a lot of Black 101 Finites. And these are people who came in with some crypto money. So, yeah, I think it is trust. I think it is, tied.
So I don't know if you know Joe and Simon, but I want to just quickly make the introduction, guys. So
guys.
Hello.
Hey. What's up? Hello. I mean, Joe looks, I'm going to assume that's not a fake backdrop. He's on a beach somewhere. He's doing a hula. It's good stuff. And Simon's clearly that's a fake backdrop. No one could have that awesome of a space.
So Cage, listen, every Monday you put out a reel on Instagram. You bring the hobby news in a 1 minute reel. Yep. That's a short time. And I watch your reels pretty much every Monday, man. And I know that reels can go up to like 90 seconds. Are you thinking about maybe pushing that a bit longer ever or what?
Funny. I hope I don't get sued here, but I won't. This is not suable. But, when I was a kid, I listened to a radio station in an AM news station in New York. And it was 10-10 wins. I had a slogan. It was, you give us 22 minutes and we'll give you the world. And that stuck with me. Like, my parents would have it on and I'd be going to elementary school. It's like a long time ago. So this was, you give me 60 seconds and I'll give you the hobby. That's kind of the catchphrase. I currently expanded to 90 seconds. And if you go back, I've done one a week without fail since April of last year. So I've done, nearly 100 of these. And, without fail. And I don't go above the 60 seconds. Like sometimes it even cuts me off at the very end. Like, you could go to 61. I'm like, oh, maybe I can squeeze 63 seconds. No, it's 60 seconds. I want to keep it to a minute. I'm trying to be religious about it because that's kind of the slogan. But the tough part about it is, like any good movie, stuff is left on the cutting floor. It really is on the cutting room floor.
And I think that's the angle for what I'm trying to do here on Sports Cards Live, making it, kind of changing up my format is, bringing you on every so often. You want to hop on for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 90 seconds, whatever. Let us know maybe something that was left on the cutting room floor that didn't make it into your reel, because there's more than 60 seconds worth of news each week, and you're having to be selective with that. So here we are already, 5 days after your last reel, 2 days before your next one. But is there anything out there right now that comes to mind that you think we find interesting?
I can give you a couple of minutes, but one thing that's really interesting is I'm wondering what's going to happen with Panini, kind of going out and Fanatics coming in, and whether or not it's just going to be printers. And one of the things that I saw that a lot of people didn't see was released. I think Topps did an advent calendar, but I don't know if people realize Panini has one too. It's a Kaboom calendar. It's like a Kaboom pop-up countdown. They call it like, holiday countdown. And I don't know whether they're looking to just kill all the iconic, Panini inserts that people are always, what's going to be the next PMG, right? Well, downtowns are now, you can go to Costco and get a jumbo downtown guaranteed in a $40 Costco box. And now they got a Kaboom advent calendar. And, it's as kitschy as Kabooms look with the cartoons. These are like even more exaggeratedly ridiculous looking. If you take a look, I think they're for sale on Walmart, and they're available now. You just type in like Walmart Kaboom countdown calendar and you'll find it right there if you want. I was going to put a picture of that up and just be like, what the hell is this? The Kabooms themselves look a little silly now. And, it was just an interesting thing that not a lot of people saw. I don't know if people even knew that there's a Topps advent calendar out. So that was a fun one that definitely did not make it, into the cut. I wouldn't stay on the cutting room floor. But I have, if you'll go ahead, please, sir.
No, let me talk about that for a second, because that's an issue I have in the hobby, even with Upper Deck. My beloved Upper Deck, because I love my hockey cards, I love it all. But I love, it all started with a jersey card. The first couple of years of jersey cards are awesome, and now people don't care about a simple jersey card. They did it with PMGs and jambalayas, and with their EPAC and achievements, and all these different versions of them. There's just too much of it, such that I'm not interested in them anymore. And I think that's what you're getting at with Kabooms. We might start to see that with Kabooms. And we have Simon and Joe with us right now. They're both basketball guys. So I just want to go to each of you guys and ask, what do you think about that? Are you interested in these new versions of Kabooms too? Simon, start with you. What do you think about what Cage is bringing to the table here?
So I definitely, hey Cage, I agree. They're definitely, let's just milk the Kabooms and downtowns or whatever in the last year or two that we have this license for sure. But I'm also with Cage that Kabooms aren't really for me. They look a little cartoony, comic. Like it appeals to some people. It doesn't appeal to me. I think Cage and I are a little bit more traditional in our tastes.
Joe, what about you?
Yeah, not a big fan of Kaboom or downtowns. Gold and black finites I like. So, there's that staple, but anything that's, I'd even be curious, Cage, how you're feeling about Deca. We saw the Wemby sale on Fanatics last night, which, Jeremy, I actually agreed with you for the price. I preferred the Deca flashback Wemby, at whatever it ended up with, like 140 or something, compared to 1.2 for the black shimmer. To me, that seemed pretty good value, and I like the aesthetic. I know it's not cool to like Deca right now, but that particular card was pretty cool.
No, listen, if you're saying binary choice, which one am I going to pick? I got to pay 1.2 for one and 140,000 for the other. I'm clearly going with 140,000. My preference would be neither. And you know what? The sad part for me is, I think everybody kind of agreed the 2012 Prism set is kind of cool. It's kind of iconic. It's pretty awesome looking, right? And people were like, okay, well, what is the Panini set that people are going to be chasing? What's going to be that iconic, 96 Topps Chrome basketball kind of set, right? Well, 96 Chrome basketball came out. Like, they weren't redoing it and reissuing it every 5 years or every 10 years. Like, they weren't just putting it back in products. Like, it seems like there's a 2012 throwback now in every sport, every year, every product. You look at last year's, football and basketball product. They had the 2012. There's a LeBron 2012. There's a Luka 2012 and a Trey. And, they threw it in there, flashback. Now this year they did a whole product, the Deca, which goes back to 2012. And it doesn't even make sense. I know they're delayed, but Deca, what is it, 10? Right? You want to quote like a 10-year anniversary product. Why didn't they do it in 2022? What are they putting it out in 2024 for? Are they really that delayed? So, to me, they're, look, I don't want to judge Panini. If I was in their spot, I probably would, keep the money printing machine on myself. You know what I mean? And I think we all get it. But if I were sitting there counting on 2012 Prism to be the iconic stuff, I'm holding it and I'm going to keep it for 10, 20, 30 years, thinking that that's going to be the stuff that is nostalgia driven, stuff that people are going to love. Well, now you have all these, these copies. Well, I know they're not the same, but it's overkill on it. On the downtowns and the kabooms, just to put a point on what Simon was saying, what I don't love about them is you'll never know how many there are. That is the problem, right? They're not numbered, and you can call them a case hit. I compare the downtowns and kabooms to what people are trying to do now with a lot of the 90s basketball inserts, talking about pack odds. And you guys have seen this, right? Because you've seen the Jordan inserts run, the ones that are numbered that there's only 50 of or 100 of. You've seen the PMGs run. You've seen the ones that, no one can say there's more of. And we're not going to count those crazy ones in Beckett slabs that have no serial numbers. Just take those out of the equation for a second. There's 100, there's 100. There's 50, there's 50. There's 200, there's 200. But then you get these, well, I looked at the Fleer Ultra and there's this many boxes. And this so that means there's only 141 of these. Okay, says you. It's not printed on the back, right? And I'm sure at some point in time, someone's going to try to do that with the downtowns. But, I mean, how many of them are sitting in Panini's office ready to go out the back door when they're not, licensed? Seriously, like how many of them are printed extra for replacements? And you'll never have the answer to that because it's not numbered. I'd be very scared holding it. The thing that saves the downtowns and the kabooms is I know that that's what the kids of today love. They do. So one of the things that you kind of try to bet on if you're really in this space for a while and you're thinking I'm going to be here 10, 20 years from now, maybe call it 20. The teenagers now who don't have crazy money, who are going to come back in 20 years, like all of us did with a little bit of disposable cash as older people. What do we spend our money on? The stuff that called to us as kids. I don't get it, but Jeremy thought Timo Solani was a heck of a hockey player. Don't blame him, right? But he's buying that stuff now. He might not have been able to buy all those awesome cards back then. So the kids who are walking around shows now with the Pelican cases, maybe they can't buy all of the downtowns and kabooms that they want. But when they have that money, that I do believe that's something they're going to look for, unless they get completely killed in the production.
And another issue are uncut sheets can add to the population. That can be a problem. I like this comment from Vintage Card Collector. He says, outside of creative genius, the best part of 90s inserts is most were only around for 1 to 2 years. Panini inserts get stale, as do Upper Deck in some cases, and probably Tops as well. So I hear that makes good sense to me. Timepiece has a bit of an issue with you, Cage. I'm not sure. He says the kids today aren't watching this podcast, Cage. I'm about to log off. Please stop the Panini Prism talk. It's okay, Timepiece. I want it. So, Cage, there was one other thing you wanted to talk about before. You were gonna keep on going. Do you remember what that was? Yeah, go ahead. Hit us with that.
Listen, it's like a steel trap up there. But this is going to be good for your comments, and this will be good for Joe and Simon, for everybody to chime in, because I might take some heat on this. But what do you bring me on for? You're not bringing vanilla on here. We got to ruffle some feathers. So one of the things that I'm thinking about in the hobby is I always love this. The less story you have to tell about a card, the better that card is. All right. And that if you are able to slam a card down on the table and everyone knows what it is, heck, my wife knows what it is and she doesn't give a shit about cards. That's a card that I think has some staying power. That's a card that I think will sell for more and more over time, right? That's got an iconic nature to it, right? If you have to tell a story about a card, the more story you have to tell, the more, yarns you have to spin about it, the less likely the next person is going to pay more and more and more. It's just kind of my general rule about things.
Sure.
Now, I believe there are some good storytellers in the space. And I don't know whether or not those storytellers are good or bad for the space. I can name one if you want, but
go for it.
So I think the best, I'm going to call it a pumper, right? And not in a bad way, right? Because this is what his job is. I think the best in the business at this is the Wharf Sports Cards. You guys know this Nick Fredericks, right?
Yep.
And keep in mind, he's only going to talk about cards. And this is an important thing here. And I love Nick, right? Where I consider him a hobby friend. He's only going to talk about cards that someone has given him to put in an auction as a consignment. So this is something that he has a fiscal interest in that card selling higher. Let's get that as rule number one. He's not talking about these cards for education purposes. He's not going out there and, writing an encyclopedia and giving this knowledge for knowledge's sake. He's going out there and he is talking about a card because he wants it to sell for more. He is telling a story about this card. And I'll use an example from this week. And Jeremy, you might be able to even pull this up. I don't know how to do that shit. I'm not a computer whiz, but it was a Jerry Rice game-worn Shield card. Simon knows what I'm talking about, and he did a whole story on it.
I just covered on the premiere auction show with
Great
Adam
card,
Gray.
you thought. Great. Why? So why is it a great card? We'll get to that in a second. Hold that in your brain. Give me a reason why it's a great card. Because Nick did a great job of telling you why it was a great card. It's a card that before his story, I didn't even know existed. And if I laid it down on a table at a show and showed it to even a hobby person, they'd be like, oh, what's that from? What year is it from? Well, you know, what set is that from? It says Colossal on it. What's that mean? It's not iconic in any way. The next person who buys that card, and I know who bought it, the person who buys the card is not going to do as good of a job of storytelling of it as the Wharf did. And more importantly, probably paid more than anyone would have, because that story gets you whipped up. It gets you emotionally buying it. You're now buying into a pump of a card. There's only 3 game-used Shield Jerry Rices. And here's the other 2. Great story. Again, not shitting on Nick at all. I think he did a very good job, because we're all talking about it. You talked about it in the auction. He probably wouldn't have had he not put it in his story. I wouldn't have even known the card was in the auction. Simon shaking his head, which means he probably saw Nick's story. So he's doing his job. He's getting eyeballs on the card for a consigner. He's doing a job for Fanatics and bringing attention to the card. But all right, these other 2 had never been put up for auction before. Why? Because who cares about them? And this one is the first one publicly selling. And what's so great about it? Well, Jerry Rice, one of the greatest of all time. Let's compare him to Kobe. Let's compare him to the greats in basketball. Mistake number 1. Basketball and football, not the same. And as much as I love Jerry Rice, very, very different comparison. Number 2, and here's the biggest one. What game was it from? What season was it from? What year was the card from? Because I can tell you this, it wasn't playing days. It was decades and a half after playing days, okay? And what if I told you that Shield was from a Seattle Seahawks jersey that Jerry Rice wore at the end of his career? Yeah. I might be right. I might be wrong. Now, there might be 3 Jerry Rice Shield cards now, but Jerry Rice looks pretty healthy to me. There's no reason why there can't be dozens more Jerry Rice game-used Shield cards from his Raiders uniforms, his Niners uniforms, whatever uniform you want. 3 now, but who the hell? So why is that card iconic? And yes, the person who bought it for $30,000, after those stories, after that emotional pump, he thought he got a bargain. He's like, oh my God, it's the first game-worn Shield Jerry Rice ever. And this is, that card's one example because it's the most recent one. And why I bring this up, guys, it's a personal thing for me because he does a good job. I, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, bought a card for way more than I should have paid for it that I did not know I wanted until I saw a Wharf story.
Yeah.
And I paid a ton for it, and it wasn't a card that I really wanted to have. And I sat on it for a little while. I decided, you know what? I don't even know why I bought this.
So
for a loss.
Are you saying then to be careful and don't get romanced by the Wharf stories because you might overpay?
It's not just Nick, but yes, it's all of it. Keep in mind, and listen, a lot of us do this. We do content about cards. We're bringing attention to cards, right? And that is, it's part of what we do. And part of it is education. And part of it is knowledge, and part of it is to shine a light on a card in an auction that we feel.
These are all and these are all impressions, and we're bringing attention to it, which is going to result in I won't say inflated, but maybe additional incremental bids that are going to push the values up a little bit. Correct. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Why don't you give us? You think it's good or bad?
So I think ultimately it's neither, but you have to realize when you're buying it that next time this goes out there, it's not going to have that same emotional attachment to it. And the 1, 2, or 3 additional bidders that were brought in by that crazy storytelling will not be there. And if you're going to be the one selling it, you're probably going to lose money on it, which is what happened to me.
Okay. Listen,
what do you think, Simon, Joe? What do you think?
Yeah. What's that?
What do you think, Simon and Joe? Am I a lunatic or what?
Go ahead. Let's start with Simon.
So I follow Nick, and yeah, when he posted that story, I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. And so I was like, how much is this selling for? I think I might have even looked into what the price was when I before it's sold, just to see what's the price at right now. So he does a great job. He's a great storyteller. Obviously does great research, and so you can get seduced by it momentarily. So that's definitely true.
Joe?
Yeah, I sort of agree and disagree. I mean, the part I agree with is that storytelling and acquiring cards into our collection are absolutely connected. Where I would be a little concerned is if the story that Nick or anyone else is creating doesn't align or resonate with your own story. Hopefully you have your own story of why that card's important in your collection. So autonomy and collector sensibility is what I would advocate in the hobby, more than somebody telling you what to think.
Joe, when was the last time you were at a card show and took a gauge of the IQ of the people walking around?
All right. Okay. We have somebody else. We have another guest in the back room who I want to bring on. So I think what we're going to do is, Simon, if you're good, we'll let you sign off. Thank you for coming on, Simon. We'll get you back in a Saturday or two from now. So keep that on top of mind, that we'll get you back on again. All right.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Good to meet you,
Simon. All right. So a couple of things. First, Josh Dawson here says that Darren Ravel is one of the best storytellers in the hobby for sure. And Josh Dawson is a guy that I know. I got a couple of my favorite cards from you, Josh. And Adam Gray. I mean, my partner on the Fanatics premiere show going on 4 years is also a great storyteller about cards. And, that's what he does. And that's what Nick does. And that's what you do when you sell other people's cards. When you consign for other people, you want to see them do well. And I will always default to the people that are buying. You need to put on your big boy and big girl pants and make decisions for yourself. And community is good for that, because you can bounce the idea off some other people. Don't just listen. Do some asking as well. I think that's the best way to defend.
You ever watch Jim Cramer, right? You're like a Jim Cramer, because you have Adam on your show. You have these people on your show. Jim Cramer, Mad Money, CNBC. He'll bring on the CEO of a company, or he'll bring on somebody from a company, and they will talk about the company when the earnings report comes out, even if it's not so great. And they'll talk about how the company's doing this in the future. They're going to do this during the holiday season, and they'll put the stock chart up, and you'll see as the person's talking, the stock's going up like this, as the person's talking. And yet you got to remember, this guy's not going to say anything bad about the stock.
No, of course not. Well, look, here's a comment from Rip City Bandwagon. Says, Nick isn't bidding for anyone or manipulating prices. Buyers must take responsibility for their actions. I just said that in different words. Me and Rip City are on the exact same page here. And I got to bring it up because Timepiece does not like you, Cage. He says, your story is to rain on everyone's parade and make anyone who listens to you speak hate themselves. He thinks you're the true definition of a troll. I want you to respond to this, because Timepiece, I don't want to filter through your comments anymore coming at Cage. I understand where you fit, but if you don't mind just backing off so I can manage the comments a little bit better for the show, I would appreciate that. But Cage, do you want to respond to Timepiece for a moment? And then we're going to move on. And we're going to bring Brent Wire on, deep value investor, the man behind the Pareto principle. He wants to come on. He'll come on right away.
Before I answer, everybody take a pause for a second. Go grab a beverage, adult beverage. We're going to play a drinking game. We're going to do a shot for every time the word Pareto is said in the next segment. Okay? Just boom. You might have to have a big bottle because it gets said a lot. Anyway, so Timepiece. I would say, yeah. I mean, if you want to view it that way, that's fine. And to the comment before it about whether or not it's buyer responsibility, of course it is. I mean, it's one of the most obvious things in the world. And it's not about, I don't know where the word hate comes in here. I love Nick. I think he does a great job, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. And of course, you have to bear responsibility of it yourself. But really, if I could distill the point down, Timepiece, to one thing, there is emotion in it as well. And everybody has to be honest that even if it's not a storytelling, at the end of an auction, sometimes you're ready to hit that bid button for one more bid increment than you would have, because you get swept up in the emotion. You want the card. The story might have brought you into it a little more. And sure, you have that. What I'm talking about is simply that. Try to be as level-headed as you can.
Use your community. Build your community. Get your relationships. Send Cage a question. See what he thinks. Yeah. Mookie Chilson says shorter Cage, and he says think critically before buying $30,000 Rice Shield cards. That's fine. Let's bring on Brent wire. You're on the show now, Brent. Deep value investor, the Pareto principal guy. He's been on with me before. Brent, it's been a while, I think, since you've been on, but welcome back, man. And I did say to you, first of all, when you come on, bring something that you find interesting right now. Talk about what you've seen. What's going through your mind right now, Brent?
Yeah, so I definitely want Cage to take a couple shots because I think his intellect will increase as he takes another shot. So
you have to say the word.
I'll be a good start to the
Pareto.
Yeah, there we go. Pareto, I said it twice. Take 2 shots. There we go. Where's your Diet Coke?
Dude,
I saw Cage come on. I'm like, I have to come on now. This is a great opportunity because, Cage was one of the first podcasts I listened to. And, I love him when he's just shooting the shit and hanging out with the guys. I miss him being on with co-hosts and people to lead his intellect. So this is good. But yeah, I'm
mostly because of this. You talk to yourself for a half hour straight. You don't have a chance to drink. So
yeah, exactly. No, I was asking some people about what they wanted me to talk about. And I actually had a couple people say the same things. And it was about, specific cards being, I call it bum rules or, scrubs, buying the very best card of a player that's not an all-time great, or they actually could be, an all-timer technically, but people don't really collect them. But if you get a chance to buy their very best cards, that gives you an opportunity to have the best card in the world of somebody. And so some of the things I talk about with bum rules, that's really important. I brought some examples here is, for example, here is a James Harden. So James Harden is not highly collectible, not necessarily in the market, but this is his 2009 Topps Chrome Gold to 50. Now this set is anchored by Steph Curry, and I would consider him a bum in some ways, but this set is highly collectible. So for bum rules, I'm not a James Harden collector, but I would own the very best card in the world of James Harden. And especially if it's anchored by an all-time great like Steph Curry and a set that's highly collectible. And so I talk about bum rules a lot. Like here's another example of a bum rule. So here is a Tony Romo, NFL Shield. Shields have been talked about a lot tonight. 1 of 1, game used. I'm not a Tony Romo collector, but this is arguably one of the best cards in the world of Tony Romo. One of the things I've talked to you a little bit last couple years has been a focus of mine, but I've been seeing it go a little too extreme now into this way. So, Jeremy, you and I were talking about the Hideo Nomo doing 60 plus K and, some of these cards of players that are not all-time greats doing crazy high prices. And so I'm starting to feel a little, the market has swung pretty far in this direction where there's a lot of collectors now of these kind of cards. And so this has been something on my mind lately. Like, is it time to zag now? Like, is it time to, I turned to a lot of these cards because the all-time greats were so expensive when I first got back into the hobby. And now they've actually come down so far. Now I'm seeing the pendulum swing the other way where you're seeing guys that aren't that collectible have cards selling for 30, 40, 50, 60, $60,000. So that's something that's been on my mind that I think is pertinent to the audience to think about. Like, notice in the hobby right now that there's a lot of groundswell around collecting, maybe not necessarily the greatest players, but the greatest cards of them, which I love to do. But, that $65,000 Hideo Nomo sale kind of, I don't know, as Cage would say, it kind of rang a little bell for me where I was like, okay, maybe this has gone a little far.
I saw someone
ringing bells right now.
Hold on. I saw someone recently say, I think it was on an Instagram story. I don't know if it might have been one of you guys. I don't remember. Say that the reason why Hideo Nomo sold so high was because of all the Shohei excitement. I don't see that myself, but maybe Shohei brought more Asian collectors into the hobby, and I'm wrong, and that is the reason, Brent.
I see that with Ichiro too. Like, if you've noticed, if you look over the last 2 years, Ichiro's prices have gone up like 5 to 10x. And I don't think that's a coincidence that Ichiro has gone through the roof when Ohtani's gone through the roof. I don't think that's a coincidence. And now we're seeing Hideo Nomo all of a sudden picking up a lot of steam. Yeah, it was a great set. It was a credentials. It was super low numbered, but 65K for Hideo Nomo, that's getting up there.
What Cage? You're shaking your head. What do you think about that? Because I don't know if I buy it yet. What do you think?
The Harden half, the Romo, not Nomo, Romo no. So I love everything he's talking about. This is something you've hit a bunch of times, right? An anchor set, that is a key, right? Mm-hmm. An anchor set is a key. Bums, the bums don't matter, right? But
Another great
I like
example.
that's a good anchor set, and that one counts also, right? And Frank Gore, by the way, is not a bum. I mean, he's top 10 running back by yards of all time.
It's a hobby joke, though. Like, you're a bum if you're not.
Because most running backs are. That
Yep.
is a different thing, right? And the no-mo falls into a very specific thing also, right? So you guys know who Andy Pafko is? All right, Jeremy does, Joe does, Brent might not. It's card number 1 of the 52 Topps baseball set. Nobody knows who Andy Pafko is. That's a bum. But people collect the 1952 Topps set. It is an anchor set, as you talked about, Brent. And it's also one of the more expensive cards in it, not because Andy Pafko was anything great, because he was card number 1, and kids used to keep that set in rubber bands. So card number 1 used to get destroyed from conditions, you know?
Mhm.
So it was one of those things where, like, if you had a 4 or a 5 on that card, you know, that's a set registry chaser right there, right? So,
Yeah.
So what the no-mo is you have guys at the very high end of this, and you talk about this, right? You know, I skimming from the top, right? You got to remember the high end of this of collecting here is, yeah, he did pull Jessica Simpson. That's a great. I love Bob Boozle. Bob Boozle, you know, you got to hang out here now that you don't have Sports Card Radio. So just
let's talk about that page that's skimming from the top, because that's really.
So give me one sec, but you can hit that. But why the no-mo sold is because the guys who have put together their PMG sets, right? The PMG Reds, the Naz Nubs, the guys who are doing that, credentials, rubies, these are the things that they're moving into now. Baseball, they moved over to baseball and trying to buy the Barry Bonds has had huge run-ups also recently in the prices on his stuff. So what these guys are doing is, you know, I don't call it set registry, PSA set chasers, but that no-mo, I would bet dollars to donuts. Stupid saying for old people, because I think donuts cost more than $1 now, but you know what I mean. I would bet that that's somebody who's trying to put that set together. I would bet that's a set chaser, and that's why
I would argue it's probably not. I doubt if someone.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to get posted by somebody, and he'll probably start chasing.
It's a Spinatron type card, right? But I want to go back to Brent for a second and just dive into this, because I think it's fascinating, and I always believe you got to start with the player, not the set. Personally, and I say personally, but I also think that this is good advice. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are opportunities. So my question for you, Brent, is like, why do you want to own the best card of what you're referring to, and I know tongue in cheek, as a bum player, but what you're by a bum, I think your definition of bum is not the GOAT, not the Kobe's, LeBron's, Jordans, not the Gretzky's. You're talking about not the Brady, anyone but those top
collectability
guys.
Yeah, like the James Harden is a great example. You know, people are like, why would you buy James Harden? It's like the guy who was runner-up for MVP and MVP in 3 straight years. Like, it's insane to say, why would you buy James Harden? But
Right.
like, you know, going back to what Cage was talking about, like, I love to talk about collecting horizontally and not vertically. And so if I have the option to have a gold rookie James Harden to 50 or a base Topps Chrome LeBron James, I'm getting the gold James Harden all day. You know, so that's what I'm going to do, because I'm going to skim from the top. I'm going to collect horizontally, not vertically. I don't want any other James Hardens. Maybe his NT, you know, to 99, like with a nice patch. But I'm not going to collect all James Harden. I'm going to skim from the top and only collect the very best.
So if you are in a position to do that, I think that's great. And then I think about people who can't afford the Michael Jordan jambalayas and rubies and credentials and all these. And then I think to them, and I think about Cajun Cardboard's tier system. I think, well, if you can't afford a tier 1 card, maybe go down to a tier 2 card. But what you're saying is, no, buy a tier 1 card of Scottie Pippen or Dennis Rodman or somebody else.
Anybody. Yeah, like, so for example, like Cage will remember this card. So I actually bought this card from Cage, right? It's a Shaq Red PMG. Love this card. Love the value of Shaq. I would not be buying tier 3 and 4 and 5 of Shaq.
You and I have that card as well, Brent. We're card bros on that one. I have a copy as well, and I love it too. And I don't consider Shaq to be although sometimes I did sell off some Jordans and keep my Shaqs because I could do more with the Jordan money than the Shaq money because there's more of it. But to me, that's still an A+ holding.
That's what I'm saying,
there.
though. Like, for the money I spent on the Shaq, though, the Jordan I could get would be like a non-numbered PSA 10 fill in the blank random being pumped right now insert that has not an important or significant card.
We got to talk about the Pareto principle here, because that's what you first brought to the show here. And I think I was you came on to Sports Cards Live a couple years ago now, and then you did the podcast tour after that. But I mean, are the players you're talking about, are they in the Pareto? Are they in that top percentage? And the Pareto principle is 80-20. 80 is or 20 is a pretty big number, right? Jordan is
killing me here.
Jordan is like 1%. Yeah, I'm not doing it on purpose, Gage, I swear. But Brent, that's kind of where I'm going is, are these players that you are skimming the top of, are they in that top range of the Pareto? Sorry, Gage. Are they in the top 20%?
So what I would say is, if you look at the Pareto principle, take a shot, Gage. Technically, a guy like Frank Gore, I think he's top 5 all time in rushing yards. Yes, he's in the Pareto principle. Take a shot, Gage. So he's top 5 all time in rushing. So yes, he is, but the hobby's not focused on him, right? So he's top 5. So he is in the Pareto principle. Shot, Gage. Sorry. Okay, I'll stop. He is, but the set is the 2012 Prism Gold of Frank Gore. That set is definitely in that principle. And I won't say the word anymore because I don't want Cage to lose track here. So there's an interesting way to look at this. It really started with me. I remember it was Topps Chrome LeBron James base cards, PSA 10s were 5 to 10K. And I could get it. I'm telling you, and I keep bringing them up, a James Harden gold to 50 for 6K. And it didn't make any sense to me. I don't want a base Topps Chrome rookie card of LeBron James. I don't care who the player is. It's just completely uninteresting to me. But that James Harden gold, it meant something to me. I'm like, this is a significant and important card to a Hall of Famer, to a potentially could have been a 3-time MVP. It's not about James Harden. It's just the set is definitely in that principle, right? And it's anchored by, it's really important that people consider this, that a set is anchored by an all-time great. So I have an Alvin Kamara example right here. Black Finite Kamara. People joke right now how it's the Mahomes year. That's a real thing. It is really important that Mahomes is in that year. Just like 03 Chrome, it's really important that LeBron is in that year. 2009 Chrome, it's really important that Steph Curry is in that year. And you'll notice that with 90s cards, if it's anchored by Jordan, they have significantly more value than if Jordan's not in that set. So it's really important that the set's anchored by an all-time great. It's 24 karat gold. It's only picked up recently, but for a long time, it wasn't really highly desirable because Jordan's not in that set. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about it, but it wasn't anchored by the all-time great. So it was missing something there. So the Pareto principle is never meant to be like, you can only buy Tom Brady, LeBron James, and that's it. I care about the importance of cards too.
So Mookie Chilson here says, deep value investors adding hamburger helper to his burrito. And I know it's tongue in cheek, but it's kind of, maybe the principle is a little bit wider than we thought originally, because, based on, or compared to when I had you on way back, this is a little bit, I want to say it's a little bit off brand for you, but maybe it isn't. Maybe you are just evolving and becoming more and more educated as a collector in the space and discovering more important cards that have really incentivized you to skim from the top and pick up those players. You talked about the LeBron Topps Chrome rookie. You have no interest in that. I don't either. I had a Michael. I don't even have interest in the Jordan 86 Flair anymore. I owned one of those. I had a PSA 9 of that for about 15 years. I sold it. I don't miss it. I got a painting of the card right there. That satisfies me now. But back to the LeBron Topps Chrome is that you could take that $6,000 and tuck it away and let it build up and buy a better LeBron card. Maybe the black refractor. We saw one sell on Fanatics on Thursday out of 500. Do you ever think about, instead of going to a different player from that top tier set, and instead saving for a better card of the best player in the set?
I do, and especially when there's opportunities. So LeBron has come down a lot over the last couple of years, and I definitely do see the opportunity there. LeBron's a great example. Cage, you've talked about that BGS 10 refractor that you bought. And, I've talked a lot about this, where a grade is only as valuable as the highest parallel that is connected to. So that LeBron refractor and a BGS 10, I'd have no interest in it because there's a black to 500, there's an X-fractor to 225, and there's a gold to 50. So it's so far down the pyramid that grade really doesn't matter because there's better parallels of that card. So overpaying for grades makes no sense unless it's the top card. So LeBron is like, there's definitely opportunity. Jordan, he's so priced out of my range. If I wanted a green PMG Jordan, I love green PMGs. I would never be able to afford a green PMG right now. But when players come down where they're affordable, and you find the opportunity, I think you can pivot into card. Like Tom Brady right now is a guy that I would be looking to probably pivot into, because I feel like he's settling in now where there's an opportunity to get some of his significant and premium cards that are important at a reasonable price. Whereas, 3-4 years ago, he was insanely priced. But like the polar opposite of that to me right now would be Steph Curry. I don't know why Steph Curry is so expensive right now. I wouldn't touch a Steph Curry card. He's crazy expensive.
Two things: basketball versus football.
And hold on, guys. So Joe just took himself off mute. Joe is a huge Warriors fan. Loves Steph Curry. Joe, do you have anything you want to jump in with? Yeah, I saw you take yourself off mute. Anything on your mind, or you're just listening along?
Oh, just listening along, appreciating the convo. I mean, I'll just throw one thing in. I'm more and more curious. I am a Steph Curry collector, but I'm not able to run into the big, the big auctions for him. But I've been looking at, players that are more niche and maybe have more cultural relevance, like say a Jason Williams, white chocolate, or, Bo Jackson, whose career, not necessarily if you were starting to, compare numbers, but he represents something culturally for, Bo knows. So I'm curious, how the Pareto, accounts for cultural significance, because it seems like what we're talking a little bit about, set recognition and prominence of set, or anchoring something to a set or somebody in a set. And then we're talking about true GOATs, maybe of the level of Rushmore. And then, where does culture come into the Pareto computation?
Well, I mean, I think you see culture impacting collectability all the time, or, like Steph Curry is a prime example. This idea that he came in, changed basketball, he's highly likable. Maybe he's a top 10 or 15 player all time. But his prices are crazy high because he's significant right now. You see it with Stephon Marbury lately starting to pick up steam. You see it with, guys that, like you brought up Bo Jackson. He just doesn't have a lot of great cards, but I think that definitely has a significance. And, that's why you can't just go by stats, and it's just not like whoever's the best. That's why Frank Gore isn't, like, here's a prime example. I think Curtis Martin is third all time in rushing, and his prices are nowhere near like even a McCaffrey right now. So because McCaffrey is more relevant. So I think that's definitely important.
3 things now. Number 1, I love the Jason Williams, white chocolate, cultural relevance, great commercials, great guy, easy to buy. And, using some of Brent's, reasoning here, 98 Topps Chrome, great set, has Vince Carter rookie in it, has Dirk rookie in it. That's Jason Williams rookie year. You can get them for a fraction of those guys, and it's a really cool set. So you got that anchor back there. Number 2, to what Brent was saying about Steph versus Tom Brady. This is possibly the minute to clip for your episode here, because the people who are listening to this, you got some older collectors who will agree with me. But anybody who's tuning in now trying to collect Christian McCaffrey instead of Curtis Martin, or anybody who's trying to collect any of the current guys, even the GOATs, even your Patrick Mahomes, even your guys who are, fantastic. A couple years ago, Brady was the guy. I mean, he was playing still and was the guy. He was a playing GOAT, had all the Super Bowls, won an extra one with Tampa Bay. You couldn't touch his stuff. And listen to what Brent just said. He wants to pivot into Tom Brady cards because the prices have come down. Think about that when you're thinking about buying any active player. Think about that with LeBron now, right? Because I said this on the podcast when Tom Brady was still playing. I said there will be a time when he stops playing. And I don't care how good he is in the booth. I don't care what he's doing culturally. I don't care how many Fanatics fests he shows up to. When he's no longer playing, there's a cap. He can't win that extra Super Bowl with Tampa Bay anymore. He's not going to be doing anything else that's going to increase his stuff.
Yeah,
there will be less people, right? There'll be less people looking for his stuff. I mean, it's just, and what happens is but it'll go back up. And I think that Brent's actually right to start looking at that stuff now, right? There will be a bottom and it will move back up. But it's an interesting thing to think about if you're thinking about players who are playing now, right? Curtis Martin, just to kind of put my third point on it, one of the tough things about Curtis is he doesn't have a fan base, right? So he's evenly split between the Patriots, the Jets, and while he was great with both teams, he just doesn't have that like rabid, like people really love him. You know what I mean? Gore, the 49er fans, true and true, right? Colt fans, sure. I mean, same kind of thing. Steph Curry is always going to have the Warriors, I mean, even Clay, who went to a different team, they love him there, so that's part of the problem I see with Curtis Martin. But anyway, those are my fun little plays there.
So I want to bring Alex Ovechkin into it because we're talking about like active.
You bring him in now, I can leave. If you bring an Alex Ovechkin on the stage, I definitely.
I'm gonna just explain this really quick. People are asking me all the time now, when is the right time to sell Alex Ovechkin? And that some people are asking me, when is the right time to buy Alex Ovechkin? Well, the right time to sell Ovechkin, he did just get hurt. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. So erase that from reality if we can. The time to sell Ovechkin is like right now, while there's so much hype about him because it seems likely he's going to break Gretzky's goals record. The time to buy Alex Ovechkin is like a year from now, 9 months after he does it. And all the money is going back into Connor Bedard and whoever the rookie is next year. It's like Mahomes won that Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl, and the cards were they peaked leading into the Super Bowl. He won the Super Bowl. Everyone takes all those cards that they were waiting for him to win the Super Bowl. They put them up on various platforms for sale, and the market gets flooded and the values come down. The time to sell isn't when they reach what you think they're going to reach. It's well in advance of that. And so, I don't know how much in advance. It depends on the milestone or the award or the championship, but that's I believe how that works. Guy, I want to quickly say hello to Chris Carter. Good to see you, Chris.
Well, he does catch touchdowns.
What's that?
I said, all he does is catch touchdowns.
That's Chris Carter. That's him. Bob Boozle says, shots fired. Oh, Vintage Card Collector says, Steph's collectability is right behind Kobe. I love his market stability long-term. And I do too. Plus, he's got the personality. I think Steph is a great player to collect, but his stuff is expensive. Joe's always saying to me, when are you going to get a Steph? He's been asking me for years. I'm like, not yet. I might wait until he retires, right in between retirement and Hall of Fame eligibility. When people aren't thinking about him, they're thinking about Wemby or the next Wemby. Maybe Chet overtakes or, Giannis goes on a run. Who knows? But, okay. All right. Let's just take a breath here for a moment. Good discussion. And I want to keep, if you're welcome to stay on Cage. Brent, you too. I want to switch it up.
Man.
Talking about, are you sticking around, Cage?
I don't. Well, let you tell me what the next topic is.
Stick around, man.
It's the Shohei auto. Wipe the auto. Get it autographed in kanji. Are you sticking around, Cage?
Yeah, I give you 10 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. All right, so let's talk about that for a minute because it's something that I promised the chat we were going to get into, and I want to talk about it, and I think it's interesting. So I'm going to share my screen here. We'll all go off to the side there. This is the Jeff Wilson reel that made its rounds through Instagram, where he basically says he wiped off Ohtani's autograph. What do you think of this? And we got a whole bunch of discussion on it. Adam, the Real 22nd guy, he did a whole podcast on it. Check it out, the Basketball Card Podcast. And he did a great job because look at 27 replies to his comment here. And he goes through in his podcast and discusses all the different reasons why people were defending this move. And Adam doesn't think it's a good move. He's got his reasons. A really good podcast that he put out. The P. Ryan Collection, another person who's pretty prominent on Instagram. And he says, if you have access to Ohtani in a way that grants you a kanji signature, why would you not do it to a regular card versus a card that already has an autograph? So that Alex Jaimo says it's fair. It's the same human being replacing a version with a better version, just like we do with all other aspects of our life. She thinks it's cool. She thinks it's fair, not foul, and so on and so forth. Boston Card Hunter says disclosed means it's totally fair. The bigger question, will anyone slab it again? So I want to just show that, do a little bit of a review of some of these comments. And I did invite on Alex. She may pop in. I don't know. She said Saturdays are tough for her, so we may not see Alex tonight. But I also invited the guy who did it, the guy who did whose card this is. First, here's the card on Golden Auctions right now. This is it. It is, as you can see, it is not slabbed. No pictures in the auction feature a certification of the kanji auto. I think the auto is good. I think we know, because the guy has access to a bunch of players. He's like best friends or very good friends with Mike Trout. So there's no doubt that the autograph is real. I don't doubt that. But you have to wonder what happens down the road if the person, is it going to mislead anybody down the road? Right here in the chat already, Bob Boozle does not like wiping autos. It makes the statement on the back false. That's one of my biggest issues. Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest issues, because you look at the back of the card and it does say that Topps, can I zoom in on here? Let's see if I can zoom in on this, make it a bit bigger for everybody. One sec, guys. Let me just open that up. Whoop, where'd it go? Where did that go? It seems to, does it come up for me? No, it won't come up. But basically, it does say somewhere here, the signing of all Topps autograph cards is witnessed by Topps representative to guarantee authenticity. That is no longer true for this card. And that is an issue. I think that is an issue. So I'm going to keep on going here, guys, and then we'll get the panel to weigh in on it and the chat. Now, I told you that I talked to the owner of this card, and I asked him if I could share our discussion, and he said yes. So I said, can I read it? I hope he doesn't mind if you're watching right now. I'm just going to share it on my screen, but here it is. Here it is. I said, he gave me an update. I said, 2 questions. How did the conversation go with Golden to take the auction down? Because he wanted to take it down because he thought it was going to be slabbed. And then I said, was that the only copy of his auto that you wiped and had him re-sign? He says, it'll be taken down when I fly out there next week to pick it up. I'll be providing them with different items to run in its place. I didn't like the idea of a raw sale because I believe that'll turn potential buyers away. I will take the Beckett LOA and try to have it slabbed with that as help on my own. He goes on to say, yes, it's the only one I've done. Doing another at this point would most likely be impossible. For one, the first time was the right place at the right time situation. And with the press I've gotten on this card, I don't know if he would do another. He says, Shohei is not easy to reach. He's not an easy to reach person, no matter who you know. Getting him to sign a specific way is another story. Also very hard. He does only for close friends and colleagues. The only other thing I'd like to mention is I'm very close friends with Mike Trout, but Mike was not the one who helped me get the Shohei. I want to make that clear because that seems what people have assumed. I say, appreciate the insights. Can I read this on my show tomorrow? He says, sure. He says, I will say the press and feedback on the card have been amazing. People find it very cool. And the fact that I did disclose the info about having it wiped has been seen as a very fair move on my end. And I said, that's definitely the right move to disclose that this card is what it is. So with all that said, I'm not a fan of it. Like, the guy's very nice. He's very nice. And I understand the comments people make that it's your card. You can do what you want. I really recommend listening to Adam's podcast. But with that, let's go to the panel now. And we'll start with Joe. Joe, what do you think? What do you think about what this guy who goes by Simply High End Cards LLC on Instagram, what do you think about wiping the auto and having it redone in kanji on this Topps certified card?
Yeah, I mean, it brings up a whole intersection of issues. So it's not an easy thing to unpack. To simplify, I think he's a bit naive. Certainly, his handling of it is in a vacuum as best as you can do in terms of bastardizing a card. What I found kind of interesting was the responses in Jeff's original IG post that were defending him, and kind of that spirit of, I can do anything I want with my card, or he can do anything he wants with his card. And that's just an impulse that I find concerning, not just in the card world, but maybe in the world in general. And in this instance, I guess, what we need to keep in mind is that life goes on past this auction, and it's very, very naive in my mind to think that it won't be manipulated at some point down the line because of our short memories. And I'll turn it over to the next person.
Oh, I think those are good thoughts. Those are good thoughts. Cage, you're below Joe. Let's get your thoughts on this.
Sure. This is an easy one for me. Real easy. I can't believe Jeff would wipe that off. I can't believe he would sell the 84 star card. I mean, Jeff is just involved in everything. I was shocked to find out it wasn't Jeff that wiped the auto off this card. I mean, it looks like when he posted that he was the one who, I'm just kidding. So
this isn't about Jeff, but let's hear your thoughts on the card.
The funny stuff about this, right? I agree with the people who said you can do whatever you want with your card. I agree that this guy can do whatever he wants. He can crumple it up if he wants. He can erase it. He can sign the name on it himself and hang it up on the wall. He can literally do whatever he wants because he owns it. I agree with that entirely. But
no, we just seem to lost Cage for a moment. We'll let him come back. Brent, let's go to you while Cage is working through his Wi-Fi issues there.
Yeah, I think that, if anybody was to slab this card, it'd be authentic altered, and it's an IP auto now. So I think as long as it's slabbed and understood that's an IP auto and it's been altered, I don't have an issue with it.
So it's being, and that's the thing, it's being offered on Golden right now, but it is not slabbed, and it doesn't have that altered auto description. And the owner of the card, current owner of the card, does say that he does want to, have it come down and have it slabbed. And I think that's, a good sort of thing to want.
There is an orange Mike Trout that's like this. That Golden is sold a couple of times. There's a 2009 First Bowman orange Mike Trout that's been wiped and re-signed. And I pointed that out a year or two ago because I noticed the autograph was more of a current autograph and it wasn't his 2009 autograph. And, this happens. So a lot of these, especially the old First Bowman autos, they get really faded, they get really darkened, and, sometimes they get wiped. So I've seen it with Pujols. There was a PSA 10 Pujols that looked like it was wiped because the signature did not match at all the Pujols from before. The Sharpie was completely different. It was more fine. It was perfect. And it clearly had been wiped before. So, I think from what I understand, PSA would slab it authentic altered. It's an IP auto now.
And I think that's right. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, that would be great if there was a way to keep it slabbed forever, right? The concern becomes, if somebody takes it out of the slab, life goes on, and there's confusion about its origin, and or some person with less transparency in the transaction. So I don't disagree that getting it slabbed and having it altered, that makes it good in that moment. I think we have to kind of look further down the line, and what we're really talking about here, I think, as a hobby, just as hobbyists, as people that care about the hobby, is best practices, right? Not what you can do. And I see Cage was talking about crumpling up. That's funny, but maybe go back to Cage's idea here. We was just about to get to his punchline. Yeah. But
go ahead, Cage.
No, I mean, the truth is you can do whatever you want with the card, right? But the problem, of course, is he immediately went to go sell it, right? And, the auction house who's selling it has now a different duty. And once it's now beyond this person who's selling it, he can't control what the next person is going to do with it. So let's just take it on its face, because there's a lot of questions about this. What he just told you in those messages. Again, nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong with what he told you. He's planning on now taking it and getting it slabbed because he's got a Beckett letter of authenticity. I'm sure it's a valid Ohtani auto. Let's just use that and accept it. If Beckett or SGC or PSA get this card and it's slabbed with anything other than the word altered on it, that is a problem because it is an altered card.
Yeah.
It can be in a slab. It can be.
PSA said they would label it altered.
Yeah, PSA should, but obviously he's got a Beckett LOA. He's going to try to take it back because it already has the authenticity. They should slab it as altered too. I mean, because it's him. He's already admitted that this is a card that he wiped the auto off and had it replaced with an in-person autograph. So
that orange Trout is Beckett authenticated, and it's got the BAS. You know, that like kind of, because that one was wiped and re-signed.
Yep.
Pujols PSA 10, they tend it, and it clearly does not look like the original signature. So this is an interesting thing.
Yeah. So I mean that, and this is what Joe's talking about, right? Because there is a longer chain with this card than just this sale and just what this individual is going to be doing with it now. And that is really the crux of it, right? Because I think what we're all talking about is the same thing. We don't want this coming up for sale in 2 years or 5 years or 8 years when Simply High End is onto something else and the world is onto something else. And it's in a slab or it's sold raw. And because of the back of the card says the autograph on the front of this has been witnessed by top, that is not true. That makes that an altered card. And it makes it important that people know that it's an altered card. And the scary thing is that even if it does get slabbed in a Beckett slab, let's just say Simply, Better Cards or whatever it is, Simply High-End Cards, he goes to Beckett and says, yeah, slab it as altered. I just want it in slabbed. I want it authentic. I want a grade on it, whatever it is. It doesn't stop someone from 2 years from now cracking it out, having it raw, and trying to pass it off, because this is, guys, it's not just our hobby, but this just happens in the world. Somebody passing it off as, look, it says on the back, this is the autograph on the card. And honestly, what P. Ryan said about just get a base card autographed, like the fact that it was done this way, I'm fine with it. Again, your card, do whatever you want. But the fact that it was done this way instead of getting a base card, it leads me to believe that that's the goal, right? You want to have that on the back of the card saying that the autograph on the front was witnessed by Topps. And there's no other reason to get it on this card instead of getting it on another one.
Okay. Appreciate all of the thoughts, guys. I'm going to share another thought of my own, then we'll go through some of the chats. Got some great comments, by the way. But one of the things that I thought was a little bit interesting from Simply High-End Cards was that, I'm with you to a degree, Cage, where if you're doing this for your PC, if you are doing this for a card for your personal collection, you can do whatever you want with the card. And when you end up dying in 50 years and your family has to dispose of it, there are issues at that time. That's the down the line part. But let's just stick with it. If you're doing it for your PC, I'm more okay with it. But the fact that this guy waited 3 years to get the auto and then it seems like immediately went to sell it, that's where I lose a bit of my understanding or support for the move because of that. So I just want to get that out there. Now let's go to some comments from the chat. CH Card says altered, period. We all agree the card is altered. I think you can't reasonably disagree. Mookie says there's a reason it's not slabbed. Graders want nothing to do with it. Well, we're going to see that that's not the case, Mookie. They're willing to slab it. CH says accepting wiped autos in the hobby opens the gate for forgers to tweak autos on these cards. That's already opened up, I think, though. I think people are already doing that. Brent just called out 2 other instances of that happening. So I don't know that opens the gate, CH. I think that gate's already open because it's just something that people can do. Chris Carter says, but if you own the card, you should be able to do whatever you want as long as you pass the info of what was done. The only issue is if this was passed on. He goes on to say, but what about when the slab gets cracked by a future owner, which we've all insinuated already. I think Chris is on the right track there. Mookie here says, if PSA decertifies cards that are cleaned by Kurt's card cleaning, why would they knowingly slab a card that had the auto wiped? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. You're nodding, Cage, and I think that's a good question, but I don't know that I'm not yet there to say, well, that question doesn't have a good answer.
Jeremy, the correlation he's making about the Kurt's cleaning, you've made the same exact comment about Kurt's stuff. It's like, hey, you know what? These guys are dipping their cards. They're cleaning their cards, using the stuff. If it's a PC card that's staying in their collection forever, they can do whatever they want with the card. But if they're, going to try to reslab it and then sell it as a higher grade after, cleaning it off and stuff like that. So I just like that Mookie Chilson.
So what you're saying, I think what you're saying, Cage, is that PSA shouldn't slab it because they might have to decertify it. But they've said, okay.
Yeah,
Let's just keep going. Hold your thought. Rage says, if we okay this, the hobby is even more doomed. I think that's a good comment. If we okay it, then we're just opening up the floodgates. Now, I don't know how many instances there are where you're going to.
Well, Jeremy, how about this, right? A similarity, right? Yeah. What about like autos that grade 10s, but grade 9s because the auto goes to the edge of the card and goes off the card? What if you just take a little wipe and you wipe that edge of the autograph, right? And now the auto doesn't go off the card and it gets graded a 10. Like you're right that there's not going to be many instances of somebody going and getting Shohei Ohtani's autograph in kanji, but I can think of a million other.
Right, and that example that you just made is simply to manipulate the grading company and up the value of your card. I personally think grading autographs is it's just a bunch of baloney because autographs fade. And then what do you do with so now your slab, it should be you should decertify the slab in that case too, but you can't because you don't know about it. That's a whole other thing. Rage says, is patch swapping okay? Obviously not. Vintage Oddball says the modern hobby is a joke. It has issues for sure. And here YK says PSA President Ryan Hogue on the PSA pod confirmed that this card would be slabbed, authentic, altered. So why can't they just put that on? Sorry. One sec. Why don't they just put that on the Kurtz card care to go back to that comment? But go ahead, Brent.
I was gonna say, how is the modern hobby a joke when you got vintage cards that are trimmed everywhere, where you got PSA 10s of Mickey Mantle 52 tops that are known as trimmed and no one cares? When you have cards that are not rare or scarce, and they're only rare or scarce if you give them a grade, and then the grades are all over the place and make no sense, and grades given by PSA 5 or 10 years ago are not in the line with grades given now. Like, to say the modern hobby is a joke and act as if vintage cards are somehow not also a joke in many ways. Or how about the IP autos on vintage cards where we're supposed to all just believe that they're actually signed by these guys? Have you ever seen how much time a grader takes on authenticating an autograph on a card? You're supposed to make me believe that every single mantle that's been IP autoed, they're all legit, because someone took 30 to 60 seconds to look at a mantle auto and be like, oh, it looks the same. Yep, looks good. They're not authenticated by anything, not even by the card company. And people are spending tons of money on IP autos of vintage cards that are signed by players supposedly 10, 20, 30 years ago. And we're just supposed to all believe that they're signed by those players. So to sit there and bash on modern cards and act as if they're a joke, when the hobby with vintage cards is full of trimmed and altered cards that have been cosmetically adjusted, IP autos, that an IP auto of a vintage card is an altered card. It should be slabbed altered. So like, it's hilarious to sit there and make fun of the modern hobby as if you're on some sort of like high horse of your vintage cards. Cause I think I've had enough of that also. It just makes me laugh every time.
I think everything you said makes good sense to me, Brent. I don't think the modern hobby is a joke. Vintage Oddball does, and he's entitled to his opinion. But I also think right now that Vintage Oddball hopefully listened to all those great points you made and is maybe going to reconsider his, or I don't know if he's a man or a woman, reconsider your position on that Vintage Oddball, because I do think Brent presented some logical arguments against the statement that the modern hobby is a joke. Cage, do you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you take his comment, right? I mean, there's always been bad actors in it, but I think maybe what Vintage Oddball is saying is not about modern cards, but about how there seems to be more shadiness. Now, we can always point to, I mean, the origin of the hobby, like, your Honus Wagner card, there's a heck of a story to that. And there's always been, people going to prison for shield bidding and all kinds of craziness. But it seemed like, the bad actors were few and far between. Grading came into it, in the last couple of decades. And now it just seems like there's more stories of people manipulating cards, manipulating autographs, manipulating it now. And I took his comment to mean the stuff that's going on now rather than the cards now versus cards later. So,
right.
But no way there's more going on.
My head. Brett, everything he said is right. And I also think in-person autographs are an altered card and should be slabbed that way.
Brent?
Yeah, there's just no way there's more going on now. Like, I don't believe it. I'll bet you there used to be even more going on, in the 80s and 90s. When most of those high grade vintage cards were slabbed and known to be trimmed and known to have issues. And
when did PSA start grading cards? Do you know that? The answer to that? I mean,
late 90s.
in the 80s, trimming a card really wouldn't do anything. You couldn't send it to PSA. You were just trimming your own card to make it look better.
Yeah, you could just say it was mint.
Yeah. So it's a different kind of game.
All right, let's go to Jeff Derrico. Says he believes Adam Gray mentioned to hole punch these cards. I agree with that. All altered cards should be hole punched by the grading company. That's a tough thing for me to accept, because unless it becomes their property, I don't think they have the right to do that. But what I just said is probably not very popular, but I'm just thinking from a legal perspective, I want them to do it. Don't get me wrong. I want them to hole punch. If they are 100% certain that the card is altered, hole punch that card, just ruin it, because it's already been ruined to the hobby in many ways. But I don't know that they can do that. Rip City here says, I'll take a libertarian view on this. People can do what they want, even if it's different than what you would do. We all agree it should be disclosed that it's altered upon sale. I think we all do agree with that. The question comes on the subsequent sale. What's the person who buys it from you going to do? And now we're not really talking about the autograph anymore. We're talking about like a trimmed card or whatever. Chris Carter.
Go ahead.
Let me just finish this, Cage, quick. Chris Carter says, I've been made fun of doing this, but I love it for my PC. I've gotten in-person autos on the slabs themselves. I did that back in the day myself too, because I didn't want to put autographs on the card. I thought, what's the best, right? Gage knows what's the best alternative? Autograph the slab. It says, you can do whatever you want with your property. You still have a responsibility in the long run, especially if you're not doing it for personal use. And that comes back to what my issue is with Simply High-End Cards. What he did is that you didn't do it for your PC. You did it to flip it immediately, profit off that auto, which is totally legal. You can do that. But this hobby, we are our own judge and jury that is separate from the legal system. And we really stand strong on our morals and how we feel about it. Cage, did you want to jump in?
Do you know what's funny is I was making my comments before about pumping a card up for an auction, people doing their storytelling about it. We talked about how Adam was a great storyteller and the Wharf was a great storyteller, and everybody in the comments and Joe, they all kind of said the same thing, kind of jumping on me and saying, hey, you have personal accountability. You know what I mean? You got to go out there and, you got to do your research and only buy a card that fits in your own collection and don't get swept up in it. And, hey, if you get caught up in the emotion, great, so be it. You're the one who spent the money on the card. You're the one who clicked buy the card, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I think a lot of that can also be talked about here with this card and other cards like it. We have more out there now that people should be aware of as far as education on this stuff, that if you're going to click buy on a card like this, I mean, a Tiffany card and blowout cards and, Auburn 35 does a great job on it. They have all these, altered card databases that are out there. And I guarantee you that this card is now all over the place on blowout, and there's, all kinds of stuff on it. So, my hope would be that, anybody who's looking to bid on something like this or buying anything with any kind of real value to it, given the fact that so many things are altered and touched and you name it, before you click buy it now, go do a little bit of research. Put it in the old Google, and you'll be surprised what comes. Put the serial number of the card even, imagine if you want to, like the LeBron RPAs out of 99, you put the serial number in and you can see what the patch looked like before somebody messed with it. I mean, there's so much out there. So just
I completely agree with that nowadays there is so much information out there. When you are spending significant money on these cards, you need to do your research. And if you don't know that yet, that's the cost of tuition, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that happily because I feel for you, but that's the cost of tuition if you don't do your research. And that's the problem when I meet people at a card shows or at the LCS or whomever, and they say they're not on social media, they collect in a vacuum. And I think, well, that's great if you're collecting flagship sets every year, but if you're doing big stuff, you need to be informed. And that means being out there and being immersed in the hobby somewhat to make sure you don't get burned. Joe, you got something to?
Oh, I agree with what Cage is saying. And maybe to clarify what I was trying to get at is this specific instance is this specific instance. I think what we're doing here is having a larger conversation about what we feel is sort of, again, I'll come back to this term, best practices in the hobby, because you're right. This is enough notoriety now for anybody that's going to throw around the kind of cash that this might end up fetching for them to be responsible enough to do their due diligence. But this example invites other examples, and other examples may not have as much fanfare around them, notoriety, people coming out, or even people volunteering the information in the first place. So I think it is important to have the conversation and to get real clear about what just because you can do it, yes, you can do it. It's being done. It's happening, whether we like it or not. But the question becomes, what does the chorus of the hobby sort of speak to when these moments occur? And what is our overall sentiment about it being or not being something that we approve of?
Yeah, and Rip City. So Rip City Bandwagon here said it's not about okaying this. Who has the authority to set the rules of what someone does with their own property? And that's what we're saying. Well, we don't, but we kind of do, because you're going to somehow, it's going to come out, and the hobby will disapprove, because the hobby is a strong force, believe it or not. And so, yeah, we don't have a legal authority to set these rules of what you do with your property, but there are hobby mores that you just shouldn't violate.
Listen, Rip City, when I finish shopping, I take my shopping cart back and I put it back where it's supposed to be, instead of letting it, roll out and ding somebody else's car. That's what we're talking about. There is what you can do and what you should do. Right. And you're right. This guy, he's 100% within his rights to do what he did with this card. It's just not something I would do. And maybe you would. I can't tell you. But we've now laid out the reasons why something like this is a slippery slope. And you're right. He can do it. Go right ahead. No one can argue it's his property. But this is what you can and what you should. Guys, I'm going to take off. This was fun. Thanks, Joe, man. Next week, I'm going to come to the beach and hang out with you there. We'll do this next week from there. Jeremy, thanks for having me on. Poirot, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Cage.
Take care, everybody.
Scott Mescuti says, I think you guys need proper Asian representation to speak on the Ohtani autograph. Can you please add Denny cards to the stream? Not tonight, but thanks, Scott. You then go on to say, you're new to the hobby. Please explain why all new Upper Deck designs are the exact same from the 2000s. It's a good question. I'm getting tired of it myself, Scott, as well. Vintage says cards are worth more than ever before. Far more shady characters now. Carvin, good to see you, Carv, says Cage needs to grow some facial hair to fit in on the screen, I think. Too bad you just missed him, Carvin, but thank you very much. Bob Boozle is writing songs now. The new Sports Cards Live jingle goes something like this. Hell nah to the nah, nah, nah. Hell to the nah. So on the chorus of the hobby there, Joe. Okay, where is the line of acceptable, Chris? That's what we're trying to hone in on, and it's not an easy place to get to. Brent, anything else to add to that discussion? I think we can kind of put that, unless we don't, I'm happy not to, but I'm kind of ready to move on from that topic. What about you, Brent?
Yeah, I was bored a couple minutes into it, so I think it's probably time to move on.
All right. Okay. So with that, Diamond Card does say great conversation. I'm glad some of you are enjoying the conversation on that. Chris Carter, where is the line of acceptability to edit or add an auto to a card? A $5 card, 100, a print run? Yeah, exactly. How do you do it? Ray says, if you're not the athlete who signed it, you have no right to mess with it. Kind of like that position myself.
I mean, well. Diamond Card might be a reason why I'm moving into a Brady card now. So, that I'll be sharing that pretty soon.
Awesome.
I'm glad he's in the chat.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Okay. So I'm just thinking, what's next? So there are a few other items that I wanted to hit on the agenda here. And one of them, we did that. So this is interesting. It's kind of on the same level. It's the same type of thing. I showed this card at the beginning of the show, but I think it's worthy of showing again. Guys, this is a Upper Deck the Cup Mario Lemieux autograph patch card. It was released in 2009, and the back of the card states, It's certified authentic by, is this MBA or it's MBA, Mike Baker Authentic. But the back of the card says the memorabilia has been certified to us as having been used in an official NHL game, et cetera, et cetera. There is a gentleman out there who has a website that is called Penguins Chronicles. This is his website right here. And he is and I'm just going to say, because I haven't fact checked him, but he's a self-proclaimed expert in Pittsburgh Penguins jerseys and the provenance and the authenticity and the time periods and the different ones that they used. He's got a museum of all the equipment. He's got the research that he's done. He's got a gallery, a marketplace, et cetera, et cetera. And then he's got this page here, which I couldn't find myself. I had to ask him for the link to this page, because this card, he attests that this jersey, the jersey that this patch came from, could not have ever been used by Mario Lemieux, because the Pittsburgh Penguins never used this jersey when he played for them. And he was of the position that the card shouldn't be sold. I'm of the position that it's a pack-pulled card. It's an Upper Deck issue, not a seller issue. So go ahead and sell the card. And Slab Sharks actually really went out of their way, and they messaged every bidder on the card with a link to this guy's website. And here is his page on his website. With the card itself is the one in question. And he goes on to show the card up for auction. And he goes through a description of all the different types of jerseys and when they wore them, and some intense detail here, guys. Now, I'm just giving this for context, because I do have a question to pose to everybody, I guess. And there's 2 copies of it that he's aware of. This is another card, a limited logos, that also pulled patches from the same jersey. And then he is also well known, I think, on Blowout. This is his post on Blowout that goes back to 2019. There's his username, Pens Chronicles, and he goes on to maybe call out other cards that are misrepresented on the back by the card company. And before we move on from that, I just want to also state that maybe in the legal jargon here, or in the wording on the back of the card, maybe Upper Deck does absolve themselves by saying certified to us. Certified to us. They're not certifying it. It was certified to them, and that's all they're really saying. So with that all said, what issues come out of this? Because I think several issues come out of this. Like, is this the only time this has ever happened? Does it bring into question other cards, other jerseys, the provenance of them? Who's Upper Deck buying these jerseys from, such that they were being certified to? Should they do more due diligence, et cetera, et cetera? I'm going to go to you guys on the screen here and get your thoughts on this, because, Brent, you're still here. What do you think of that? How does this make you feel about patch cards that are certified as being game used on the back? Do you lose any trust in them? What do you think of the situation?
It reminds me of vintage and IP autos. It's like, to the best of our knowledge, this seems like it's authentic, and it kind of, we don't know if that patch was swapped. How do we even know that's the original patch that card was pulled from? That patch could have been swapped. Or how do we know this guy's right? I mean, most of this stuff is, to the best of our knowledge, it's more than likely authentic. Just like a 52 Topps mantle that's signed after the fact. It's, the grader has to look at it and say, to the best of my knowledge, this seems more than likely authentic. And when I see patches like that and somebody brings up authenticity issues with it, it's either been swapped, or the person's not correct, or the wording on these cards is so vague too. It's, it says something about it's been used in a game. I don't even think it specifies which player it was worn by. Like, it literally could be any hockey jersey from any game ever worn, and it would match the wording on the back of that card. It wouldn't even have to be worn by him in a game.
You're 100% correct in your interpretation of the wording on the card. And I've had that issue myself before. I've had that. All it says here is the memorabilia has been certified to us, having been used in an official NHL game. And the autograph was signed in the presence of a company representative. It says nothing that Mario Lemieux wore that jersey. It says nothing well, that's what it said. It does not say that Mario Lemieux wore that jersey.
I noticed this a lot in some of the baseball cards. You know, there's a lot of the patch baseball stuff now that it'll say game use on the front, but on the back it'll say not associated to any game, specific game or event or anything like that. And so it's like it could literally just be a jersey from any game used by any player at any time. And it doesn't even have to be the player on the card.
Exactly. To me, that's a big issue. And there are cards out there that say, the patch on the front of this card was worn on December 4th, when the Penguins played, the Bruins or something like that. Like there are cards that go to that degree, but the language on the back of the cards by by Upper Deck, Panini, and Topps has all gotten more vague, less reliable. And I think brings into question some things, and I wonder who's writing. Like, is it just the legal departments that are writing the back of these cards, and are they writing them to give themselves to just absolve them of any liability whatsoever? While at the same time, they do know that it was worn by that player, but someone might come along on a website like this and say it wasn't. I mean, I don't know the answers to these questions, but I think it's a concern and something to be aware of, and this is why we take in content, we educate ourselves on the hobby. Joe, any thoughts? We have some good comments in the chat. I'll get to those after, but Joe, any thoughts from you on this?
Well, tonight I learned I have the same birthday as Mario Lemieux, but that's neither here nor there. I have thought a lot about this. I started out when I was sort of moving out of vintage into modern collecting, being fond of both autos and mem cards. And as I've read more and more reverses of mem cards, I've become increasingly confused because of the language. And in some instances, you wonder, is there intention behind the ambiguity, or is it just that particular issue had ambiguous language on the back? And that's, frankly, created a phenomenon in my collecting where I've moved more towards parallels, inserts, things where the value may not be as dependent on a mem status. And there's an aesthetic element, there's a scarcity element, talking blacks, golds. By the way, Brent, I love your Harden play. I think that's a beautiful card. And, I'm not a Harden fan, but I fully appreciate the significance of that card. So yeah, I think it's a bind that the manufacturers have gotten themselves into. I know from talking with Carvin in the clubhouse days for many years, he's mentioned at times that it doesn't even necessarily matter to a lot of collectors, that the aesthetic of a patch card is more important, and people are still, they want to see it. They want to see those team colors. But for me personally, it's disinclined me to continue to push into mem cards.
Yeah, and I love mem cards. I've got a great collection of them. I think it's great, and I recognize and I try to be self-aware that I'm taking a leap of faith with these. And if it were to come out in a couple of years or down the road or tomorrow, next week, whenever, if it came out in the future that all these jerseys that were acquired by the card company from the period of, that my cards are from, were not what they thought they were, the person who certified to them was full of it, that's going to really piss me off, because I want my memorabilia cards to be game worn. I don't want them to be photo shoot worn or event worn. I want them to have been on the ice in an official game. That's important to me. And if you were to strip that away from me, I'd be very disappointed in in the cards that I own and in the company who produced them. So those are my thoughts on that anyway. Let's go to some comments, because there's a whole bunch on this. First of all, Bob Boozle here says, I think Upper Deck needs to be made aware of this and address it. Well, I think they've been made aware of it, and I can't speak to whether or not they've addressed it, but I haven't seen them address it. So, but I think you're right, Bob. I think that is important. Rage says, these card companies are screwed now, LOL, with all the card detectives. They're leaving fingerprints at the scene, like the wrong jersey, year, being after Lemieux hung up his cleats. Shake my head. It was the mascot's jersey. And then Bob Boozle has a good point about a patch swap that you made, Brent. I think he's right. That was a good point. Chris Carter says, do we actually think Upper Deck or others have a solid hold on what was game worn, regular season versus event used? I don't know. I don't know if we do or don't. Obviously not in the case of that Mario Lemieux card right there. We just don't. Rage says, that's why I'm with you, Jeremy. I buy cards that say you have received a piece of jersey worn by such a player in a game, period. I buy some that don't. I buy some of the more vague ones, but I certainly value the ones that say it overtly more than the ones that don't. And even those, I don't know how much I can trust in them. T-Dot says, this is another reason why I don't buy modern. And that's a problem right there, that this scares some people away
I'm
from
fine
it.
with
Right there.
photo shoot, especially, for rookies. I don't mind photo shoot at all, because the value in the card is about the chase of the card, and it's about the ability to get it and how many packs you'd have to open, how many boxes you'd have to open, how much you'd have to spend to try to find that card. And it's a treasure. So, I have no issues with rookies being photo shoot. I think it's cool. I think it's about the chase. I think it's about the treasure of finding it. I think it's less about whether that patch was game worn or not. I do have issues though if patches are being swapped out. That can be a challenge. So for rookies, photo shoot is fine. If it's not a rookie for me, then it needs to be game used.
Yeah. I hear that. And I think, that's not the first time I've heard that rationale. For me, that's why I see so much value in second-year cards of players, because I don't care about what you just mentioned, the chase, the treasure, because it's a rookie card. I'd rather save 90% of the price and buy a second-year card of a player where, I like to believe, even through that leap of faith, that it is a game-worn patch on that card. Because otherwise, to me, the event used, the photo shoot is simply a design element at that point. And we just had someone else join us in the back room who I know feels the way you do, Brent.
Yeah,
So,
I was just going to say, a second year, the value isn't in the patch. The value is in the fact that it's a rookie patch. So if you buy a second year, just because it's game worn, the value isn't in that game worn tiny little square.
right. The value isn't in the card as a card. Right. So
Yep.
for me, yeah. And that's why I've moved away from having to collect rookie cards. I'm good with rookie year card. Anyway, I think we're kind of agreeing for the most part, but I am not, I don't really, the whole RPA thing is just, I don't care anymore. Personally, I know you do. I know you got your KDs, and I think that's cool. And hey, you're in the majority. I'm not on that. That's okay. Let's bring out Chris Hoge. Welcome to the show, buddy. How are you? Coming in last half hour. I love it. What's going on?
Yeah, we're coming in fashionably late.
Right on. Did you have you caught any of the show yet? Have you seen what we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, there was a scheduling conflict. My Nuggets are playing tonight against the Lakers. So I was watching that. I did tune in for the discussion on the patch here for the last 5 or 10 minutes. Good stuff.
Do you want?
I have a contrarian take on this. All right, so I don't expect people to go along with this or agree with it, but I'm just going to float it out there. I think there's something kind of cool actually about the photo shoot, the rookie photo shoot patch included in cards. Because, and the reason why I think it's pretty neat is because that event only happens once. Now, we've seen the picture of, I think, Mark Ingram wearing 50 different jerseys, and it makes a mockery of the whole thing. And I get why people don't like that. But the angle that I see about why I like the photo shoot rookie patch is that it's a special event that only happens one time. And it's an event for the card industry that has brought together these players for the purpose of photo shoots and putting on, piece of clothing for patches for rookie cards. So I think it's cool. And with game used, which I love, game used is the top of the mountain, no doubt about it. But there's hundreds of game used items for players. There's only ever going to be one photo shoot that will produce items for a player for their rookie year.
Yeah, it creates a boundary around it.
Right.
I think that's I think that is a completely legitimate take. And then I think it just comes down to personal preference. How important to you as a collector is it to have a piece of the patch from that photo shoot that only happens once for each player? That is a big deal. It is a big deal. Versus, not even versus, because you can have both. You don't only have to have that. Maybe you take my position. You go, I'm going to go second year cards because number one, I'm going to save 90% of my cash outlay, and I'm going to get a card that has the on-card auto, hopefully, and also has a piece of game-worn jersey. And if I know, Chris, we're in a chat. There's a lot of conversation going on a by the minute basis, basically. And we talk about the importance of rookie cards at times. And our common friend Victor has made a content career out of protecting or describe the sanctity, the importance of the rookie card. And I have a contrarian view to the rookie card. Unless it's vintage, I don't really care about rookie cards anymore. There's so many great cards out there. The rookie card has just lost importance to me outside of vintage because I love my vintage rookies. So, and I think that's fair. It's just a personal preference, and that's all cool, right? So, I do want to go back. I want to talk about again because I mentioned and I showed you guys all the website, the Penguins Chronicles website right here, which does have a ton of resources in it. Now, the author of the site has joined the chat here, and he says the problem is that the Pittsburgh Penguins never wore that material with that tackle twill. Neither did the Bruins. Don't know of any other yellow, black, and white color combination. So what he's also saying is this isn't a patch swap unless it's not a patch swap with a game-used patch from another legitimate card, but maybe it was a patch swap card. Laura says, so it takes 15 years for this issue with this particular card to be an issue. Maybe Penguins Chronicles, I don't know when he first reported on this jersey, cards that contain this jersey, but I only found out about it like this past week. So maybe it does take that long, Laura. I don't know. Interesting stuff though, right there. Chris, I mean, listen, I got a lot of comments here, Chris. It's good to have you join here on the tail end of the show. But do you have anything on your mind, Chris, that you're bringing to the panel today?
Well, I love, just to go back for a second, I love that Penguins Chronicles is documenting that, and that Jeremy, you've done projects like this. I just love that collectors care and that they make incredible resources like that. I just want to tip the hat to that. I want to encourage it anytime I can see it. I want to layer on to that. I mean, it's funny. Penguins Chronicles and I, had a bit of a butting heads over the past week, but I've always maintained to him. I've said, listen, I respect your work. It's important. Get it out there and make this page discoverable on your website, because I couldn't find it. I had to DM him, say, send me a link because I can't find it on your website. And I think it's important that people have access to it. And I think he may take me up on that and actually make it more discoverable. But back to you, Chris. Anything else on your mind, hobby-wise, that you wanted to bring tonight? Yeah, I'll have something I'll throw to the panel here. And I think we'll get a lot of different answers on this one. Brent, Joe, and Jay Lee is a really interesting, makes for an interesting quad box here. So I wonder what we'll all say about this. Is card collecting inherently competitive? That is the question that I put to the panel. Is card collecting something that is inherently competitive? And competitive doesn't need to have a negative connotation, because I'm watching an NBA game right now. It's basically over. But after the game, all these guys, after competing hard for 48 minutes of gameplay, they're going to go back and they're going to give interviews and they're going to compliment each other and they're going to talk about how great the other ones are. And they're going to be very uplifting. But when they're on the floor, they're competing afterwards. It's respect. So is not saying that competition means bad. We don't have to compete in a negative way with each other. But is card collecting something that is inherently competitive?
That's a great question, first of all. And I mean, we could go to Joe, Brent, or myself, but do you want to share your take on it, Chris? Because you just got here. I want to hear more from you.
I'm still developing thoughts on this. So This is going to be really rough. And if I say something stupid, it won't be the first time, but give me the leeway to sort of work out some ideas here. I think it is. I almost think that it has to be, in order for the logic of collecting to completely make sense, in order for there to be hierarchies of cards, in order for there to be some cards that are more desirable than others, in order for game use to be desirable, there needs to be some level of scarce resources and there needs to be some level of competing among collectors to get them. And some of us have to lose so that we can feel the sting of that, and so that we can try harder the next time or discover a new card to go try to find. So I do think it is. And I think it almost, I don't know what collecting would look like if it didn't have competition in it.
Yeah, I love that about Instagram, and I love that about the community, and I love the competitiveness. It definitely is competitive for me. I love putting a dumpster fire emoji on somebody's buy, or, like having some fun with somebody, when they overpay for a card, or, whatever it is. So like, I love it, man. I love, trying to have better strategy than somebody. I love trying to get ahead of somebody. I love to think about future nostalgia. I love to try to think about cards that people aren't thinking about yet, or this part of it for me. Like, for me, at least, it's probably not for everybody, but for me, it's definitely one of those dynamics that I love it. It makes my mind work more, and it stimulates me. So it's definitely a big piece of it for me.
Great comments so far, in my opinion. And I think a lot of it comes down, Chris, we talk a lot about, is the price the scoreboard? And really, if it is, well, then whoever has the most money is going to win. And I think that you only have to look to answer this question on, Chris, really the answer might be as simple as the PSA set registry and the impact that has had. So I'm going to say yes, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody is on social media and cares to compete, but the fact that the PSA set registry has had a monumental impact on the value of a base card from 1963 Topps baseball, that nobody, like the Andy Pafko kind of thing, nobody cares. That's a different case, but nobody cares about that player anymore except his descendants. But it's still, look at Johnny Moore, 86 Fleer Johnny Moore. Why is that card worth 5 figures? It's because there's only however many to go around. Everybody wants it so they can compete to have that PSA 10 set on the PSA 10 set registry. So in your thought experiment here, Chris, does the PSA set registry, is that a separate kind of area that you're looking at? Because the answer is obvious when it comes to that. Do you agree?
It is. Yeah, that's almost the perfect example, I would say, is that the competitive juices that get flowing when we look at where we rank on something like PSA set registry, and we try to bump up that score by getting the same card in a higher grade or adding more cards that belong to that particular set, is, I think that's the perfect example of it, Jeremy, honestly. Yeah, I mean, that is what I'm talking about in a nutshell. And then I think Joe had something, but then the follow-up maybe to this is that and then if we do accept that it is competitive, what are some of the guidelines or the best practices that we can establish so that, we compete in a healthy way and not in a self-destructive way?
Joe, do you got anything to say on this topic overall?
It's a great question. And what's up, Chris? Good to see you. I would say that I see it in 2 ways. On a very sort of resource allotment plane, when you're competing for black 1-of-1s, when you're competing for shields, when you're competing for PSA 10 golds, we know that there's a finite amount. And so it is a competition. Who's going to win that card? Who's going to get that card? How did you find that card? What did you have to do to find that card? There's things you have to do to secure an asset, both financially and in terms of your own ingenuity. So I think that in that field, it is clearly a competition. But I also kind of look at it. This was, I never took to golf too much, but my dad dragged me out to the golf course again and again, hoping that I would take to it. And he always emphasized that you're sort of playing against yourself, ultimately. You'll be out there on a round, and there's going to be people that are far better than you, and in some instances, not too many with me, not as good as you. And so you're kind of psychologically better off thinking about it in terms of what's your sort of ceiling, what's your best game, what's your best approach, and how well did you do in that context. So with the resources and time you have, with the connections you have, with your capacity to network, all the different things that make the hobby so dynamic, how did you fare in you could look at it card by card. You could look at it in a segment of time, in a year, in a month. But in that respect, I think it is more sort of a competition with yourself, and you're maximizing your potential to acquire cards that are meaningful to you. And I would like to think I lean a little more in that direction because, one, I'm not a millionaire, and two, I like being able to root for my friends, and I like taking pleasure in my friends' acquisition. And I know that's not necessarily separate from competition in the same way Chris was mentioning. You can kind of dap somebody up after the game, and I'm sure LeBron's dapping up Joker right now, saying, "Good game, man." But it is actually a wonderful thing, I think, to be able to root for and take pleasure in your friends acquiring things that are meaningful to them.
Great comments, Chris. You want to respond to that at all before I go off on a little bit of a response myself?
No, I don't want to get in the way of that. I would love to hear what you've got right here.
Okay, so a couple things. I love what you said, Joe, because I think that the competition thing, I think it does happen, and Instagram and Twitter and all the different platforms where we interact with each other provide the opportunity to flex, to show what we have, and like one of my favorite flexes that I have is, and I keep showing it, week after week, show after show, is my PSA 1 Babe Ruth. Now, I didn't have to spend $80,000 on this card. I got it for a fraction of that. But this, to me, I feel like I won buy the lowest graded card you can that looks the best it could possibly look. Like, I won that competition when it comes to this particular card. And this is an important card. So I like that. Now, I don't want the PSA 8 of that card or the 9 that sells for $3 million. I want that exact one right there. So I don't really care about the competition, but I like, that's almost competing with yourself to find the best card. I think like you said, Joe, we should be competing with ourselves to make the best purchasing decisions within our level of resource. Because if you're going to compare yourself with other people, you're just destined for a life of maybe unhappiness in some cases. So, love what you have, enjoy what you have is a great message to just share. We're always looking for the next card. I know I am, but I also like to take time and appreciate what I do own. And that's something I also find that the hobby's more enjoyable when I don't feel like I'm competing with somebody else. Personally, I used to compete on the set registry. I stopped. I haven't updated my set registry in years. I don't care anymore about that. And that has made me feel better. And the other thing is that the set registry often forces you to buy cards you just don't care about. The only reason you have them is because they're on a set registry checklist. I make my own checklist now, and I'm very happy that I can do that. So that's one thing. And then finally, competition does certainly exist when it comes to player collector versus set collector. There is competition there. It's natural. And I know I collect some sets that have every player in them over the years, and I want all those cards. Meanwhile, there's other people who want that player, like the one card that I just bought the other day on Thursday. I'll just show it for fun really quick. If I might have already closed the window actually, but I bought a card the other day that is of Marc-Andre Fleury from Upper Deck the Cup. And I have, like I said, 450 or so cards from this set. And there are a lot of Marc-Andre Fleury collectors out there, but this is a copy that they would want because it's really cool. Here it is. This one right here. I just bought this on Thursday, and I'm sure I disappointed some player collectors, one of whom is a good friend of mine, hobby good friend. But too bad for you. I need the card too, and I'm going to bid what I have to bid to get it. So, Chris, those are kind of those are my thoughts on all that up to right now. So back over to you.
Yeah, great thoughts. Love the distinction between the different types of competition. So I thought Joe's points about the competition against oneself is a great one. I think that's naturally how it plays out too, at least for me as a collector. The person I am competing against at the end of the day is myself. At the end of every year or whenever I get reflective, I'll look at my collection and just sort of ask if I improved it since I last looked at it or thought about it, or has it gotten worse? Are there ways that I can reshape it? Do certain cards need to go? And should I be bringing certain new cards in? And I think that can be kind of understood as a very friendly competition with my previous self, and trying to constantly improve the collection, I think can really be thought of in those terms. I also think about this idea that you mentioned, Jeremy, a comment or two ago, with the guy who has the most money in a world where the price is the scoreboard is going to end up with the best collection. And that's a great reason why I think we need to try to add more depth to how we decide what the best cards are than just based on what they're worth. But I think that there's also this interesting space that exists in the hobby that I have a couple collectors in mind who I think occupy this space, and they can be, very strong-willed. And what they do is they operate on smaller budgets, and they try to find the next card that they think is not quite appreciated or hasn't had its turn in the spotlight yet. And the ingenuity of these sort of tastemakers who are operating from small budgets and who oftentimes don't really get the full benefits of the discoveries that they make, because they might discover a really cool set, but they're, collecting a smaller player in that set, but they put a spotlight on it. And there's just a different level of passion and engagement and enthusiasm that sort of springs from these guys. And they have the ability to make preferences and reorder preferences in the hobby and make things become more interesting and compelling and other things less. And it just kind of reminds me of, not saying that these guys are starving artists or anything, but they remind me of the starving artists. They remind me of Eminem before he was rich and famous, where there was still the edge to his music, where there was just something, a little extra was there that just made the art a little more beautiful, a little more relatable. And I think those are a group of people that they operate within the logic of price is the scoreboard, but they play it to their advantage because they find the undervalued things and then they put a spotlight on them. And then the rich guys have to follow them. And the rich guys are constantly chasing. Very rarely are they taste making. Instead, they're always playing catch up. So there's almost an advantage to those guys that I don't like. This isn't a fair characterization because I don't think most people in cards are starving, but they're the starving artists of card taste making. And they sort of flip that game on its head and do it really well. So I don't know. There's some thoughts. I'll stop.
Yeah, I think a great example of that is, when someone's collecting a scrub, right? If they're new to collecting, if they have a small budget, I always recommend collect somebody that's a scrub, collect somebody that's not that significant. So you get a real feel for what an important card is for that player. So you're not just chasing the price of the card. You're not just going for what's most expensive, but if you focus on somebody that's a scrub, you recognize really quickly how picky you get, first of all, because you can afford anything you want. And you realize what is not important, what is not significant. And it really helps you steer into wow, I didn't realize what it takes to be important and significant. And then when you zoom out and you look at a player that everybody else pays attention to, say it's a Jerry Rice or LeBron James, you realize how 95% of their cards are not important or significant. And so by starting with a scrub, it makes you even if you come into more money, or even if you decide I'm going to throw more money into cards now, it helps you understand holy crap, so many of these cards they're selling for 10, 20, 30 grand are not important, because I just collected the scrub and I realized he's got 7 important cards in his entire portfolio. And so then why would I buy any of these other cards just because it's LeBron James? They're not important or significant. So I always think it's really great to start off with collecting, for example, me with Brandon Roy, right? If I focus on Brandon Roy cards because I grew up a major Blazer fan, it would really help me narrow down damn, okay, hold on. I can sit back. Let's see what's really an important Brandon Roy card. And I'd realize really quickly, there's not that many of them. And it's why are there 300 LeBron James every night ending on eBay that people are paying 5, 10, 20 grand for? Those aren't important cards. And so that really helped me quite a bit. And I think it's going to what you're saying, Chris, where it's it can really help you focus in on that.
So, okay. I love it. I love the discussion. I'm not a believer that price is the scoreboard, because what you're basically doing is letting everyone else determine what's important and what you should like and go after. And I think that's a weak approach, a weak personality. You don't have confidence in your savvy ability to determine for yourself, or to even have the experience in the hobby to know what's important, what has been important historically. So I'm not a fan of that. I don't go by that. I love what you were saying, Chris, about, searching for the next card to take off in value. And that's like you're prospecting cards when a lot of people are prospecting players. So maybe that's for Brent earlier when we were talking about like skimming the top, that's something that you can try to, reconcile together, see how that works.
Yeah, a great example of that. Like I remember a while back, there was a Joe Mauer gold first Bowman auto that sold for $10K, I think it was. And I think there was a blue Prism Jokic that sold for around $10K. And, there was they're side by side. And it was like, which one would you prefer? And people are like, oh, multiple MVP. It's the Jokic, easy. Joe Mauer, never won a World Series. Like, no. If you actually go to Card Ladder and you filter by highest price of Jokic versus Joe Mauer, you'll see that Joe Mauer is the most important card of Joe Mauer that exists. That the gold to 50 is his most important card. He has no red. He has no orange. He has no superfractor. That's it. And then you go to Jokic and you scroll down, and I challenge people, how many pages down do you need to go before you get to the blue Prism? It's just like not even an important, significant card of Jokic. So it's not about which player's better. It's about the fact that like that Joe Mauer, it's his most significant card. So it's an interesting way to collect.
Chris, you got a response to that?
I love that point, but it is contentious because I just wonder, I struggle with this all the time, right? Because I sometimes am too much on the side of loving the card and the sets and neglecting whether or not there will ever be a market for that player, which is fine if there never is, but I need to go in eyes wide open. And it's interesting, maybe the most iconic card, certainly the most valuable card in the hobby is Honus Wagner. I don't know where we might put the 52 Topps Mantle PSA 10 and stuff, but it's one of the best. But Honus Wagner is not regarded as the GOAT of baseball. He is higher ranking than I originally thought he was when I looked into it a little bit. But there's this constant battle of like hobby significance, set significance versus player significance. And in my own collecting journey, never has that played out more than when I branched out from collecting Michael Jordan, who is player-wise one of the most significant players in the hobby. And when I branched out into collecting other players, up-and-coming players, current players who are active but will never be Michael Jordan, skills position players in football, like Brent was showing a Le'Veon Bell. He has Bell's NT Shield Auto 1/1. I collect Bell too. And, there's a lot of great things that can come from collecting Bell. Like Bell's rookie season was 2013. That was the first year of select football. That was the first year of Spectra football. There's lots of significant moments that coincided with his rookie year, which makes collecting him pretty cool. But, I'm constantly at odds with myself because on the one hand, I'm collecting Bell. I really enjoy collecting him. But am I lighting money on fire by collecting him? Should I just pivot instead of collecting one of Bell's 10 or 20 best cards or something? Should I really just be more focusing on collecting Michael Jordan's 1,000th best card? Because at the end of the day, it's Michael Jordan. At the end of the day, when people come into this hobby for the first time, Michael Jordan is the lowest hanging fruit. That's what people are going to gravitate to first. His collector base is just going to compound over time. I don't know if Le'Veon Bell will pick up many, if any, new collectors over the long term. But I love collecting Le'Veon Bell. His cards are so affordable. I have on my desk here my latest Bell pickup, which is nothing crazy, but this is his. This is the 1/1 to Bell's Spectra RPA, and it's the only 1/1. And it pairs with the card from the base set, which I also have of Bell, and they're both numbered to the base set. So the RPA 1/1 is like a parallel, which matters to me a little bit. I prefer collecting base set cards if I can. One of my favorite mail days in a long time that I picked up, but I'm constantly, there's an angel and a devil on each shoulder who, are giving me conflicting advice all the time about player or set. Which one's more important? Which one's more fun?
So we talked about that earlier with the Hideo Nomo, Chris, that sold for $65K, and has the pendulum swung a little too far to card over player. And, for the last few years, it's been fun to collect cards over player in some ways, and significant sets and significant cards over necessarily the best player. But maybe it's, the pendulum has swung all the way now when you start seeing massive prices for cards where I have a Bell, but my expectations of my Bell are very, the ceiling is limited to me, right? Like I have limited expectations of that card, but I also would have a limited expectation of the 10,000 best Jordan card because I think they're overpriced right now. So I'd rather kind of hang out in a Bell and enjoy that card and have the most significant Bell card than a card that I don't think is important of Jordan. But I have limitations on what I expect out of that card.
All right. We're gonna take a pause here for a sec, guys. We have someone else in the back who has joined us, and we are.
I'll take off.
My intention. What's that?
I can take off.
Okay, Brett. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you for joining. Great stuff tonight. We'll get you back on another episode in the future here. So we'll be in touch. Thank you for coming on.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Take care. All right, Chris, stick around. We're at the 3-hour mark right now, which is kind of where I wanted to be, but. David, who is signed and slabbed on Instagram, has just joined not just Dave, you've been there for a while. I know. We're going to bring you on right now. We'll go for about 10 more minutes and then we're going to wrap up. We're not going to get to the comp discussion tonight that came up earlier, but I'm going to save those comments. We'll do that maybe next Saturday, but let's bring David on. What's going on, Dave? You're chilling. What's going on tonight, buddy?
Baylor
Right.
Bears headed for we have a chance at the Big 12 championship game next week. I just want that to let that sink in. Like Chris especially would like that because I know he loves spreadsheets. So if you could, I wouldn't mind you getting a spreadsheet ready for me that tells me exactly who I'm rooting for next week and what all the tiebreakers are. They're a little bit wild, but Baylor has not been mathematically eliminated yet. So
Congrats, man. I'm gonna make that spreadsheet late tonight. All right.
sounds good.
Nice. Dave.
Let me say something real quick. I hate that Brent had to leave. I was going to put it in the comments, but I want to be on record as saying I'm not confident Joe Mauer has a single significant card. So proceed from there.
Excuse me. I think listen, I don't know that I buy into that approach of taking a player. First of all, does he? I mean, maybe he does. Does he have essential credentials? Does he have a rubies? I don't know.
Who cares?
But the other question are there any, like, unless you're collecting for your own long-term PC, is there any reason to collect somebody that no one else is ever going to collect, or very few people relatively are ever going to collect? Now, if it's for your PC, have at her.
Totally different. Agree.
Totally different. But if you're in this and you're thinking financially and enjoyment of being in the hobby along the way, but if the financial is important for you, then, picking the best card of a bum doesn't make much sense to me. But he does say in the chat here, a PSA 10 gold Mauer sold for $16,000. So is that a significant card? Probably. 16K is significant.
I didn't hear the earlier discussion, but you've alluded to it. I mean, Brandon's someone that I know ascribes a lot of value of significance to the dollar value. And Jeremy, you and I fall on the way other end of that spectrum. I don't think either one of us cares about that very much at all in terms of significance. I know I don't.
I care somewhat. I mean,
I care somewhat too.
I've said it a million times, David, that for me, I'll just say it again, if I'm spending what significant money is to me on a card, I think about the value because it's resources for my family.
Yeah, right.
Do you think that way too?
I'll give you an example, and I know Chris collects some of this stuff. I've been telling people over and over, it's not a surprise. I'm a Mookie Betts collector. Okay. I could care less about his 9th year Topps Chrome Superfractor. I don't know why anyone could ever convince me that has any level of significance outside of some individual who is trying to actually collect every single one of Mookie's Superfractors. That's the only person that would ever matter to.
Yeah, agree.
In my opinion. And remember, I own like 400 Mookie Betts cards. And now, if that card, that 9th year superfractor, is probably more expensive than 390 of my 400 Mookies, which to me is, when I think about how I'm going to allocate my money to the cards, it can't just be about value. There needs to be an enjoyment aspect of it. And to me, there's so many other cards. I could buy 100 other cards that all have different characteristics about them, different art, whether or not there's significant sets to other people really wouldn't necessarily matter to me, but I could have all those other cards instead. And that's how I've always approached it, so I'm like you, it doesn't mean I don't care some about value, but it's never my primary driver ever.
I think that's key. The key word there is primary. It's not your primary driver, because you
Right.
come from a collector psychology, but I think we are similar, David, if not the same, in that you're going to buy all these Mookie Betts cards for under $100. You don't care what happens to the value of those. I buy tons of cards for under $100. I'm not worried about the value of them, but it comes down to what is significant to me. And right now I'm like, I'll throw around $250, $300 here and there.
Yeah.
But when I hit that, for me, $500 level, I start to be like, okay, hang on a second. It's $1,000, that's my utilities bill for the month, whatever it is, that, my kids' school, anything. I start to think that way, and I make some different, my choices are driven by the financial of it. Can I afford to collect this card? I want to collect it too. There's always collecting in it for me, but value is important, and future value is important to me too, because we're only owning these things while we own them. And then at the end of the day, we're going to be gone. Yeah. And our wives or our kids or husbands in some case are going to go sell those, and then they don't care about them. So they want it for the family's legacy. I think about all these things. I'm guessing you do too. And I bet Brent does as well. But I think Brent is coming at it more from a financial aspect. But I don't know, maybe he collects more than I do. I want to read he does say, oh God, here comes the I don't care about value, LOL. And that's fine. And listen, next time, you guys come on at the same time and let's have it out. Let's discuss it, because you're coming out at the end, David. We're only going to go for a couple more minutes here tonight.
Yeah,
legit. But next time, come on, Brent, come on at the same time, and let's have it out, like in a respectful manner, of course, and talk about this, because it is interesting. I like Bob Boozle's comment here. If a Reggie Jackson card makes me enough to buy me Hardee's when I'm 80, then I'm happy. But Bob Boozle, are you feeding your wife too, or just you at Hardee's? Is she going to get fed as well? I think we got to talk about that as well. He also says, I'm much more impressed by a collection of depth than the 5 biggest cards. I look at both. I want to see a deep collection, but I also want to see what are the best cards in your, not best, significant. What are the most significant cards in your collection too? And if all you have is depth, I'm still impressed. I'm still happy for you. You love what you have. I'm happy for you. I'm never going to project my maybe I do this sometimes, so forgive me if I'm about to not speak consistently, but I was going to say I'm never going to project my collecting methods onto anybody else, or if I do, I apologize. I would take that back and really just try to understand how you collect, because there is an infinite amount of ways to collect in this hobby, and I think that's one of the coolest things about the hobby. We have some more comments here. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I think sometimes there's an assumption that when we talk about how we collect, that we're sort of projecting it on other people. Like for me, people who know me well, I'm very much like a set collector. I still go back to that because that was the roots of how I got started in the hobby. And so as I had to sort of adapt that into what I think of more like player collecting now, like most people don't do sets. There are a few and that chase some sets, and like I still chase some sets. I'm trying to do like the Allen and Ginter stained glass stuff, which is it's hard, but I don't think it's impossible. I'm going to see. But I like subset types of things. So examples might be Heritage Action, or it might be, the short prints from Flagship, or, maybe something with a little bit higher numbering like the Flagship Blacks or Independence Days, those sorts of things. That's how I kind of took my set collecting and merged it with player collecting, because I knew I didn't have the budget to go chase down all the one of ones. Like it wasn't, or at least not the player that I wanted to do it with. I'd never have enough money to do it. And it's kind of hard. I mean, I know Chris for a while was chasing like Christian McCaffreys and stuff. And I was like, how's he ever going to finish this? And you become a mark too, right? Like people know you're doing it. And so that card would one of the cards would pop up in Dallas and it might change hands 3 times before it ever got to Chris. But everyone who owned it was like, oh, Chris is the guy that's going to get me out of this.
Oh yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, the McCaffrey collecting arc that I've experienced speaks to this discussion. So here's the first thing that I encounter when I'm collecting McCaffrey, which is there's too many cards for me to collect them all.
Yeah.
So that necessarily implies that there's going to be some limit on the ones I can collect. And then it becomes a question of, will I impose that limit? Will I decide that limit, or will I let that limit be decided for me? And so I think when I first started collecting in general, I was just sort of at the mercy of what are people willing to sell on eBay, or what are they willing to sell to me on social media? And then that was the scope of cards that I would collect. And as I started acquiring them, there wasn't a harmony among all the cards that I was gathering. There was scattershot. There was no curation involved there. It was just sort of haphazard. And then I eventually realized I need to turn the tables and I need to impose what I want onto what I'm collecting. And I need to be patient. If the cards I want aren't becoming available, then I just need to be patient. I need to be strategic. I need to go find them. And it worked out okay because I accumulated a few hundred-ish McCaffrey cards. And then one of the cards I really wanted came up for auction. So I immediately started selling all these that I had acquired so I could get the one that actually was more important and significant to me. And that actually worked out cool because I was able to have all these mail days in the meantime. And then when the card that I really wanted came up, I was able to let go of the stuff that wasn't as important to me and go get the new stuff that did matter to me. And so that's sort of the collecting philosophy question is in the ultra modern world. And this is something that I'm very jealous of vintage collectors. They don't have to deal with this issue as much, but ultra modern collectors have to deal with the proliferation of cards, the proliferation of parallels. We have to be very proactive in deciding what's going to matter to us. And I'm not going to become a victim of just whatever's on eBay today is the thing that I'm going to go buy. I'm going to be more decisive and strategic than that. So that sort of speaks to that, David. And then the other thing you were talking about, David, was the 9th year superfractor of Mookie Betts, which is a great topic. So I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, and I put up an Instagram poll, and I just asked people, which way do you prefer to collect if you have to pick one? Do you prefer to collect only rookie year or rookie second, third year, only early year cards, but all the brands? So like if I'm, collecting McCaffrey, I can go into all the different brands. I can go into, Vertex and I'm blanking on, but there's so many there's like 30 different brands that came out of 2017 football. I can go into the depths of these different ones and start picking up, interesting cards from there. Or do I shift in the other poll option was, or do I focus on brands? Do I just focus on 3 or 4 or 5 brands? Like, do I just say, I'm just going to do Prism and Optic and Select, but I'm going to collect them over the course of the player's career. So I'm going to ignore, brands that aren't those 3 from all years, but now I can collect second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, sixth year, 7th year, 8th year. And so I put this to a poll. Do you prefer to collect the early year stuff only, or do you prefer to collect just a few brands, but over the lifetime of the player's career? And the poll result was about 60-40 in favor of brands. They actually, the poll result, and that's just the people who are responding to my poll. I'm not saying that's representative of the hobby, but people actually skewed slightly in that direction, that they preferred that approach over just the earlier approach. So that's why I started thinking about the 9th year superfractor, David, was like, there are some people who just would prefer to collect superfractors over earlier cards.
All right, hang tight, fellas. I just want to call out Foul Ball's comment, and I agree. When you first introduced this topic like 10 minutes ago, David, I thought you were talking refractor. I didn't hear superfractor. So I agree with foul ball. Like, I like any year one of one. In hockey, we call them golden treasures, or a superfractor in baseball. I think they're all pretty cool if it's a player that I like. And Mookie Betts is worthy of that, you know, where a rookie who doesn't do much, maybe you just want the rookie card. So I think so. Okay, we're gonna wrap up, guys. And I know, David, you just got here. For you, we're just getting started, but we're gonna have you back again. And I want you to come on with Brent, and you're bringing some great discussion topics. So you'll come back. I'm glad you did make an appearance here. Better late than not at all. So I'm going to ask you guys. Oh, Joe, I want to go to Joe first. You got some things to add to that discussion. Then I'm going to read some final comments, and then we're going to wrap up. So, Joe, please, over to you.
Jay Lee, we're just getting started here. No, just kidding. I know we've been on for a while, but I wanted to harken back real quick to what Hoj was saying about sort of like the starving artist sensibility. I really like that. Maybe we can talk about that more fully in some other moment. But I think what it brings up for me is the notion of influencer. And we have such a negative connotation, I think, for understandable reasons, of the term influencer. But I'm really curious about whether or not there can be positive influencers, and what would that amount to? What does that look like? How would we understand that concept in a hobby that is so toxically disposed to the concept of being influenced by anything? So that's one thought that goes back about a half hour. The other, just in the conversation around where we sort of deploy our resources, is kind of the devil and the angel conversation on both shoulders, which is something I struggle with quite a bit. And I can only I may be slightly strained from Chris's way of articulating it, but for me, that devil and angel concept is players that I kind of know are not going to necessarily be anything other than my own indulgence in my PC. And if I even get, whatever, half the money back at some day, if I had to sell whatever, like I just know they're not good investments, but I still want them. And for me, like, that player is Kevon Looney. I'm a Warriors fan. He has won 3 rings, but I don't think there's going to be a huge slew of Kevon Looney collectors down the road, versus, a blue chip. And we all know the blue chips. I don't have to speak to who they might be. But I think that's a really interesting area of discussion in the hobby, both internally, because, I mean, that's what you said a little earlier, Jeremy, is kind of that idea that we get to be the arbiters of our own choices. And that is where I think the hobby, the kind of existential joy of the hobby, is most fully highlighted is in our own worlds. And one of my friends calls, like, we're the GM of our own team, our own collecting team. But I really, that is one of the things that I most love about the hobby, is that we're making our own meaning, we're making our own decisions, and we are in some way playing against ourselves with what we know of our resources and our own collecting sensibility. So anyway, it's been a great show.
Good stuff, Joe. Great comments. Appreciate that. So I'm going to go to a couple comments here first. So first of all, Brett, saw your questions earlier. Brett Miles, thanks. We'll get to those next week. But you do say so many great comments from Joe. Love this. Years of trial and error and experience for me led me to be fully comfortable with my hobby landscape. That's a win right there. When you get to that point, Mookie Chilson, a great comment right here. Anyone you form a trust relationship with is naturally going to influence you. That's how information and learning occurs. The key is to find the right people to trust. That is, I think, the perfect response to your comments, Joe, about is there positive influence? Yes, of course there is. You and I, Joe, we've influenced each other. Me and Chris have influenced each other. David, we're going to get there. It happens. It happens for sure. I think that's a great comment from Mookie Chilson. Deep Value here does why is the assumption if a card has value, I don't enjoy them? I don't know. I don't make that assumption about you, Brent, but we're going to get Brent back on. We'll get him back on with David for sure. Rage here says, remember, someone's scrub is another person's all-star. Yeah, in many cases, I agree with that. Vintage Oddball says, I don't compete with my friends. I'm happy for the cards they pick up. Heck, if a card is important to them, I will back off from bidding. Never felt it's a competition. I love that comment, and I have several relationships like that, but there are instances where I say to them, listen, I'm going for this card. And and here's what I'm willing to spend. And we'll have the discussion. What's your high end? Well, you're willing to go to 800. I'm willing to go to 2,000. So I'm bidding. I'm sorry, as much as you want it, I want it that much too. And it's a mutual respect thing that I have. And that happened not too long ago with a good hobby friend of mine. I think that's okay. Rage says we are all card peacockers at the end of the day. Many of us are. I wouldn't say all, but I think many of us, we enjoy sharing our love for the hobby and our cards with each other. And we're fortunate that social media and technology has allowed us to find each other so we can have friends that we have common interests with, friends and enemies, I guess. Maybe not enemies, but we have friends that have those common interests. Rage, I don't know what this was about, but nice comment. Well put, Joe. Couldn't agree more. I'm the same. Mookie here said, competition is necessary but insufficient. Compromise is the flip side of the competition coin. A healthy mix of both working together makes a happy collector. It's a deep comment. Not deep value, just a deep comment. And that's it. We're going to... oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, man. Good old Mo. Mo says, the hobby's very competitive. Lost out on auction today to a friend, and there was some back and forth banter going on. And that's fine. There is some of that happens, and it's nice when you can then have that friendly banter after. Hey, I just won a card on eBay on Thursday, and somebody put on it was the other one I want. Somebody put on Instagram, who did this? I thought my mega bid was strong enough, and I screenshot. I put up, and I go, over here, it was me, and then on the next slide, I put a picture of myself kind of looking silly. I go, that wasn't a mega bid. So, that was fun banter between a local guy here who I know. I've met him in person, and that was just fun. Yankees fan says the hobby is competitive and ego-driven too. Definitely elements of that in our hobby. Anthony Aiello, welcome to the show if you are still with us. Vintage Card Collector said, quite some time ago, sports are stories. That's why we love them. All right. And then we were going to talk about comps, but we didn't get to it tonight. Timepiece brought that topic up earlier. We'll get to it hopefully next week. But guys, we are wrapping this up. This has been going on. We're almost at 3.5 hours now. Thorson, what's up? Says better late than never. And hello to the rest of the panel, whom I am not familiar with. Happy Saturday. Good to see you. Oh, Bob Boozle is calling me a hobby, saying protect me at all costs. Appreciate that, Bob Boozle. And Brett says Nemesis bid battles online. As a player collector, I feel that one. I know you do, Brett. But you've also made great relationships. All right, guys, we're wrapping up. I want to thank everybody who joined tonight. It wasn't just you three, but Joe, my partner that I just love having you on with me, Joe. David, I'm glad you came on, man. I know it was late, but thank you for making an appearance. We're going to have you back. Chris, great to have you. You came on late too, I think at the 2.5 hour mark. So thank you for that. And as I've said already, or at the beginning of the show, this is kind of the new format for Sports Cards Live. We're going to bring on different people throughout the evenings on Saturday nights. And we're going to draw from 20 to 30 people. And I'm feeling like I'm getting a better understanding of how to manage it now because tonight was a great night. We had people coming and going. I like 4 max on the screen at once. So I might start to do some scheduling. We'll see. But I also like to be able to just do it as you guys show up. It's fun that way as well. Thorson says, I actually follow all 3 of you. Haha, faces to names now. There you go. There you go, Thorson.
I was like, do you even collect if you don't know who these people are? Like, come on,
No.
man.
Remember, we said not everybody's on Instagram, right? A lot of us are, but not everybody. He is. So there he is. He admits he does. So listen, I'd love to give you guys an opportunity for final comments, but we're going to skip that. Just say thank you to the chat, to David, Chris, and Joe. And because we're going to have you guys back and you'll get to say more stuff then. So that's going to be it, guys. Thanks again. If and remember, Sports Cards Live is available on podcast, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcast. Leave a rating, review, subscribe if you haven't. Hit that like button, guys. Appreciate it. But I do want to give Joe, Chris, and David a quick. You guys have 10 seconds each. We'll start with you, David.
I saw you were still on and wanted to jump in and at least be here the first time. But thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to coming back and jumping in on some more discussion topics in the coming weeks.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Chris, we'll go to you.
Yeah, Jeremy, this rules. It's an honor to share the stage with you, David, Joe, and Brent. And I look forward to future ones. When you told me about this idea, I was so excited. It's really cool, man.
I'm happy to have you a part of it, Chris. You always bring great topics. I know I can count on you for that. So thank you, Joe.
Learned a lot. Looking forward to more.
Me too, guys. Always learning, always discovering, always, it's just great. Eric Stefano, really appreciate that. Bob Boozle, we'd all like to thank your wife as well for providing you to us tonight. Great to have you in the chat as always, Bob Boozle. Guys, this is over. This was fun. And with that, everybody, this episode is what? You're muted.
Chicken Bears.
With that, everybody, this episode of Sports Cards Live for November the 23rd, 2024 is now over.